traversed the tombs of Naxxramas. We've climbed every cliff on Black Rock. Now the world cries out for heroes. As a new evil rises, there will be danger. There will be doom. There will be ancient temples filled with relics, treasures, and traps. Who will answer the call?
Lead, explorers lead, and we are in need of explorers. Adventure we seek, cross land and sea. Born to come and join us.
Oh, yes!
Hello everyone and welcome to week number 4 of History of Hearthstone. I'm Raven. I'm going to be bringing you this week alongside a new caster, for me at least, because someone I've not cast with yet, believe it or not. It's Derek Brown. How's it going, mate?
I'm doing fantastically. This is, I believe, the perfect week for me to jump onto this awesome series of games in the history of Hearthstone. It holds a special place in my heart. Around Whispers of the Old Gods was when I first started casting, so it's going to be good to take a look back to the good old days, as it were.
Yeah, and that's what this tournament is all about, rightly named the History of Hearthstone. We've been going through week by week, starting at the beginning, classic and basic set only. Then week 2 added Curse of Naxxramas and Goblins versus Gnomes. Then every week is adding more and more expansions. Week 4 is where we find ourselves right now with League of Explorers, One Night in Karazhan, and Whispers of the Old Gods is now playable for all the players we have in the tournament now. It's pretty exciting because these are some pretty high impact cards and high impact players, as we see them there on the board.
That's right. There's been some ups and downs for these players. You know, for certain players like Ant, really has not been going so well. And for some of the more premier tournament players we have at the moment, like Zalae and Sixto, Orange as well, it's kind of been a mixed bag in terms of their performance. But for the final one we have today, Dane and Neriah, that's really going to be the one I'm most excited for. Is a good show match of tournament prowess versus wild knowledge to kind of trump it out.
Yeah, and just a little update as well. Last week, unfortunately, Ant couldn't play on stream. So he played off stream and actually lost versus Orange 0-3. So that's where Ant's bad run hasn't really been going too well so far. But still, we can take a look how the standings look all together, as that was just the schedule and the order of the matches we have. And now we have Dane at top here with Neriah at 3-0. Slightly ahead on game score, though. But Dane, really big deal, actually. He's no more as a wild player and a content creator, but his expertise in, playing some of the old sets, the old cards, way more often than some of these, current HCT competitors, for example, is really coming out of the bag here. And I interviewed him last week, and he was saying that, yeah, people are bringing decks that were good back then, but aren't good right now, or aren't good with those resources available due to some nerfs that have happened, unfortunately.
That's exactly it. It's kind of rose-tinted goggles with which the days of yore are being viewed through from these players. They see the decks like Patron not doing so well. Freeze Mage was doing reasonably well, I believe, in the early weeks at least. But like you say, Wild is about doing such ridiculously broken stuff now that just doing what was good back then is no longer good enough. But as we start to bring in some of these newer expansions like Whispers of the Old Gods and Karazhan, and also, as we see here, League of Explorers, some super powerful cards are starting to be rotated in.
Yeah, I mean, League of Explorers, I think, for me, is probably the singular most powerful expansion we've had in terms of impact it's had on the game. Reno Jackson, Elise for the control matchups, Bran causing some havoc, Sir Finley Murgleton changing hero powers for every class, even Forgotten Torch to add to that Freeze Mage discussion, Tunnel Drog, Dark Peddler. All absolutely insane cards, and all of this from just a 45-card set.
Yeah, it was truly adored by many at the time. Towards the end, I think people were ready to see some of those powerhouses go. Sure. But speaking of powerhouses, the old gods themselves here, as represented by some of the cards that have been fluctuating in power level over their history. Obviously, Yogg-Saron kind of took the crown for the longest time, but since the nerf, I get the feeling that maybe Cthulhu or maybe even Yasharaj might be taking the crown for most powerful card here.
Oh, I don't know. Did you ever play Q-Block when the Zoth was a thing not too long ago?
Yeah, that was pretty good.
For me, the Zoth was always just the good one, as in it was just not crazy, not terrible, just good. Like Yasharaj could be bad sometimes, but it had spikes in, for example, the Barnes era of Karazhan, which we might see since those cards are allowed to be played. But yeah, for me, it was N'Zoth was just steady, especially when you see some of the more of those death rattle focused decks come into it. But also there's a point where N'Zoth was being played in like Paladin to just resurrect a Tyrion. You know, it was like, it's kind of crazy actually, just bring like a Tyrion and maybe one other thing back, maybe a Ken. But let's talk about the matchup we have coming up first. It's going to be Ant versus Sixto. Sixto currently in Korea, and also becoming more weeb-like as time goes on, I see, with this t-shirt and hair combo, which I do like. But the Paladin being banned out for Sixto, the Shaman being banned out for Ant. What are you expecting, Derek, of the classes we have on show here?
Yeah, this is some interesting stuff, because obviously the primary thing that I was going to talk about in terms of what I'm expecting to dominate was Shaman. We've got pretty much most of the most powerful Shaman cards thrown in at this point. It's only the Jade package that it's really missing for the peak of Shaman power. But the fact that Sixto didn't even bring it, I do find surprising. And this is a good point to bring up, that this is a meta game that never actually existed in Standard, because when Whispers of the Old Gods came out, obviously in Standard, Naxxramas and GVG was rotated out. But this is now kind of a wild format, where you still have some of those powerhouse mid-range Paladin cards, which is why I believe Ant got rid of that class from Sixto.
Yeah, also as well, as we mentioned last week, the Mysterious Challenger created just a secret Paladin, right? Which is a fear in itself for a lot of players. But let's just get straight into it. Ant versus Sixto, game number 1 here, History of Hearthstone, week number 4. Ant on the Druid at the moment, and then Sixto on the Warlock. And this Warlock just looks a little bit like a potential Reno luck. We did talk about the power of Reno Jackson. And this Druid just looks like, I don't know, this opening with this hand looks just like the good Druid cards, and then when everyone remembered Mulch was good.
That's right. At the moment, it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, when Karazhan came out, that's kind of when we started to see some of the Malagos Druid possibilities rocking around. You know, we've still got in this
Perfect
meta.
time.
Oh, well, there we go, as I correctly predicted. So this was one of my favorite decks in all of Hearthstone, just getting that awesome potential for ridiculous burst damage, with obviously Emperor Thaurissan thrown in there, as well as Living Roots, one of my favorite Druid cards. You can get some truly disgusting stuff happening.
Yeah, and we see Sixto here just tapping away Dark Bomb, Sylvanas, Anti-Killbot, Lotheb, all the old cards coming into play right now. Dark Bomb, again, one of the most singular powerful removal tools we've had in Hearthstone over the course of the years. But I do agree that Ravenide as well, getting some pretty good value, as Ant can just get in another swipe. So just more and more damage. And this could be an awkward matchup for Sixto here, based on Ant's just having the burst damage from hand.
Yeah, it's a weird one, because obviously, you know, you have Reno Jackson, which traditionally made you pretty resistant to any kind of burst combos, because it was like a super Alex Straza. They couldn't really get you low enough to the point where they could kill you in one turn. But that may not necessarily be the case with this Malagos Druid, because Emperor Thaurissan just kind of says to any kind of barrier you're putting up to their game plan, no, I'm going to do it anyway. There's no limit to the ridiculous amount of damage I can push through.
Yeah, it was very similar when Emperor was being played in Freeze Mage, right? It was just like allowing so much just OTK potential. It was kind of absurd. But now, speaking of Emperor, Sixto has it in hand, so it can just get... This is the other side of the Emperor coin, right? You have one side that allows incredible burst damage possibilities with the reduction of, say, for example, double swipe you see in hand now for Ant. But also you just have a high value Emperor of Emperor-ing multiple cards, a big hand size, and saying that's actually reduced my hand cost by like 7, 8 mana, 9 mana, which is absolutely absurd.
And this already, in this game, we've seen a super interesting kind of back and forth between these players as to how they view the matchup. Because with Ant there going for Wrath for 1 to draw through his deck, he clearly sees this as being about trying to find your combo as quickly as you can, not about tempo. But that may actually just be a misread of what's going on here, because Sixto, given that he was able to throw down Lotheb, follow up here with the Emperor Thaurissan as well, a lot of damage that's coming through in a big board state. But I suppose due to 3 swipes having been found so far this game, and may have a pretty good answer to this.
I will say, though, let's just remind ourselves of another big moment for Warlocks, at least in Hearthstone, was when they lost Power Overwhelming out of Standard. It got removed and they're placed into the Wild-only pool. And this is a big deal because look at this Emperor hit. Do you remember this, Derek? The old Leroy, P.O., Abusive Sergeant, Faceless, hit him for 1 billion damage.
Literally.
Or 24 more realistically.
Oh my god, this deck is so degenerate. Look at all this stuff that Zixo's got in there. Implosions, as you said, the burst combos. Even Sylvanas thrown in there because just why not? It was a crazy card.
Well, also as well, in this matchup, Sylvanas means that at any given point for Sixto, he can just say, well, you cannot just want Malygos to live, right? Malygos has to kill me on the turn you play it, because otherwise you can steal it with Sylvanas.
And clearly here for Zixo, showing the way that he views this matchup, being that it is, again, more about tempo. He did not save that Emperor Thaurissan to get the precisely perfect reduction so that he could deal 30 damage in a one-turn combo. He's using it to throw down to the board, this heal bot, just to get something on the board. Because I think maybe he's starting to realize if he does start to fall behind on board to some of the mid-range minions, you know, maybe we see an Emperor Thaurissan of Ants for Ant himself. If he can stick a couple of those minions, maybe that's too much damage to the point where a one-turn combo can actually be delivered through Malygos. Because even just looking at this is a lot of blooming damage that Ant's got.
Wait, if he goes face for 5, this is glorious, right?
No
so this
way.
goes to face for 5, puts him to 25, and Ant has 25 damage from hand next turn, and he's just seen heal bot. Yes. Oh, it's the 3 Moonfires, 18? And then the Living Roots is 7, right?
Don't tell me that's
5
lethal.
2. Yeah, it's lethal. Okay. What? Unless I'm going crazy and I've just repeatedly not added it up right.
6, 7. Oh my god,
Yeah.
you're right.
Got him.
This is my introduction to History of Hearthstone. I see what, a turn 8 lethal from Malygos.
Extraordinary. Sixto is so shocked. His face isn't even moving right now. Just remind yourself, there we go. Sixto is playing from Korea at the moment as well, ready for the HCT tournament. But let's just be honest, and half laughs, half coughs his way to victory. And that is the power of the extra low-cost spell, right? It's a big deal as Ant takes the 1-0 lead. Because look, like without Living Roots, your damage potential is just so dramatically decreased. He didn't even get an Emperor turn that game, but Living Roots is 1 mana, Malygos is 9. That means you can cast it with Moonfires, which were again helped by Raven Idol. It's just the same thing. It's the Shadow Visions of the past almost, right?
The Shadow Visions of the past. I like your description of Raven Idol, which obviously you would know better than anyone else.
Of course. That's absolutely nuts. Just I'm gonna Feral Rage you for 5. And then you're like, what? And Sixto had nothing he could do because he anti-heal botted the turn before to just heal up a little bit, and then he's just dead. Like, how much heal do you need? And takes the win with the Druid, and now as Warrior and Mage left, Sixto back to the drawing board in terms of his pick.
And I do want to point out there for Zixo that, in my opinion, like you said, he did go for the heal bot the turn prior. I don't think that was a mistake. You know, you cannot live in the world where your opponent draws the exact perfect cards to kill you on turn 9 from 25 health with Malygos. Those are just not games that you ever win anyway. So you just have to pray that they don't have those ridiculous combos and go on your merry way trying to kill them with your own minions.
Yeah, it's very, very similar to more recent times with if, the Shadow Reaper, Mind Burst, and Anduin sort of starting, right? If they have 4 Mind Blasts, you probably just lose, right? Like, that's just the unfortunate scenario that you're in, because you cannot really play the game whilst accounting for that much damage. But, okay, so is this 2-0 for Ant? Wait, this is a bit different, actually. This is still doable because of Emperor. I'm thinking old school stuff.
Yeah, there was like a very brief window where I believe this matchup was like truly unwinnable for the Mage, and that's like after Justicar and before Whispers, because then you didn't have, or before Forgotten Torch, because when you have thrown in there Forgotten Torch for extra damage and the Evolved Kobold, I believe, in combination with Emperor Thaurissan, you can always get there. Like, there's always a chance that you can push it through. But when your opponent has Justicar Trueheart in their starting hand, there is a reason why this matchup is touted as the original unwinnable matchup in Hearthstone.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens now, as Ant is pretty much just doing stuff until he can play just a card too hard on turn 6, and then he's going to be pressing hero power fairly often. But there's the evolved kobold you mentioned, something that came with Whispers of the Old Gods, that, as you said, really opened up Freeze Mage again for almost its second coming, I would say. Yeah. In terms of, there's original Freeze Mage and then this. This was absurd. Torch plus kobold just opened up so much extra damage potential along with Emperor. It's absolutely huge. And this is why we see now, guess what? That torch is always going to face. Put it to face now. Get the bigger torch in your deck. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it is always going to face. Obviously, there's an arguable downside because it shuffles a bigger torch into your deck, which you don't necessarily want at this point, because, you want draw at this point. You want your Acolytes and your, as the other one is drawn,
again,
and your Arcane Intellects to make sure that you can find your Emperor Thaurissan and get this big reduction. But for Sixto, this is the kind of hand that wins. He's got Alexstrasza in there. He's found both Forgotten Torches. If he can find Emperor Thaurissan before the Justicar came down, maybe he'd consider himself in a position where he has a chance. But obviously, we can see here it's going to be a tremendous uphill battle.
And this is why I want Freeze Mage to come back at some point. Or at least a deck to this style, because the play that Sixto just made is so sick, because you look at the hand and you're like, well, you just torch the 6/3, right? It deals 3 damage. It's perfect. No, you don't. Like, every point of damage you need to try and get to face somehow. Yes. So what Sixto did there was play Barrier. It pretty much, it soaks up more than the True Silver. True Silver. I did that last week. True Heart can hit 4 because the Barrier creates 8 armor. And then you ping face. That's 1 damage. And now ping face. That's 2 damage. Every single ping you can get, you want to whip in here. And he's doing it again now. Doomsayer, because now Ant needs 1 damage from somewhere, or the weapon and just a True Heart go into the Doomsayer.
And this is why Freeze Mage has been one of the most consistently nerfed decks throughout Hearthstone's history, because it doesn't do stuff that you're supposed to do in Hearthstone. Like, if there's a 6/3 on the board, you're supposed to kill it because it's hitting you for
when you have a spell that deals exactly 3 and it's half the cost of your opponent's minion it kills.
You should probably do that. Yeah. But also, it's a testament to how long Freeze Mage survived for. Like when the Ice Lance went through to the Hall of Fame, people were saying it would die. It didn't. It carried on for a long time after that. Just Pyroblast on its own was plenty enough damage. It was really only Ice Block itself dying that kind of put the final nail in the coffin of this very tenacious deck.
And now, 9 armor. So not crazy levels yet, and he has used a shield block. But is he just going to kill Sixto instead? That's my question, Darren.
He's just going for him. What is it with Ant and turn 9 lethal? He just manages to get it done with decks that really have no place doing it. As for Sixto here, he could try freezing the board. He's got plenty of freezes with which to do so. He could even set up an ice block, but he knows that this is just not a game that you win. You have to draw your hand perfectly. Your opponent can't draw Justicar. And there we get another look at one of the most lopsided matchups in Hearthstone history.
Yeah, it's definitely weird, right? Because I'm glad that happened, because it didn't involve Ant just pressing hero power for 30 minutes and then just having enough armor. But that is kind of funny, right? Like, he took a hit or so from just a True Heart, which I still believe is correct, of course. And Sixto, much better player than I am, so I'm just going with the guy who knows the stuff. But yeah, it just wasn't enough with Grom. And again, talked about with Sottle last week, the power of Death's Bite. Like, look at Bloodraiser right now. That's a good card. That Whirlwind effect opens up a multitude of options, and it can be played in different ways to have a high impact. But Death's Bite was kind of that, even more powerful because the actual damage it does is higher. So it's absolutely huge.
I was thinking about this the other day. Is Death's Bite necessarily that much better than Bloodraiser? Like, obviously for damage to face in those scenarios, it's way more powerful. But like, in terms of what you're actually trying to do as warrior decks, I almost feel like the instant and inevitable death rattle with the Whirlwind effect could potentially be more powerful. But that is besides the point, as Sixto gives it another shot here with his Reno lock. Again, this is worth pointing out. This is not a deck that ever existed in standard Hearthstone, because it's Reno lock with the GVG and Nax Ramus cards thrown in there. We see Implosion. We just saw a Sludge Belcher as well in there. So some combinations that really shouldn't be allowed in Hearthstone, but they have to adapt to that. They cannot simply look back to what was powerful at the time. They have to be flexible with what they're putting in there, because new strategies are what you have to do when you go backwards.
Yeah, and this is something that I've really enjoyed about this tournament is just the fact that the nerfs couldn't be unlocked, so to speak. So we're not playing true like old school Hearthstone. It's kind of interesting to me actually, because it changes the format ever so slightly again, which is something that I'm really a big fan of at the moment. Is the more formats we get to play, the better, versus playing the same format over and over and over again. So we'll see how it plays out. But Imp Gang Boss, the powerhouse card for Warlock for such a long time, a pain to deal with, and just a constant threat, and is on the Freeze Mage now. And yeah, we saw Lotheb in Sixto's hand the game before, sorry, but Ant can just not care that much, because Reno puts you to 30. Well, guess what? Mage can do 30, even more so sometimes.
Yeah, quite handily, I would say, with all the cards thrown in there, especially with Scientist from Naxxramas to make it even easier to get yourself surviving to that point, because survival is actually pretty important here for Anne. As you pointed out from Zixo, the Imp Gang Boss is kind of the cornerstone of Reno Lock's early game strategy, because this is very different to the Q blocks that we see nowadays, where you are tapping on turn 2 and 3 the vast majority of the time against these control decks to gear yourself up for Mounted Giant or for Skull with the maximum amount of demons. But this deck is just curving out. He's hitting for 4 with these implosions and just delivering as much damage as he can.
The old deal 4, make 4, 4/4s worth of minions is great. But I was going to say, the aggression from Sixto's Warlock comes in a different fashion, in that it plays very similar to what we saw game 1. Emperor, Lotheb, Sylvanas, all these cards are just chunky mid-range minions that punch you in the face if left alive. So, and it does have to navigate this one, although I maybe made it sound like this was a good matchup because he can do the burst. He does still need to not die, right? And just so you know, he does have a secret live. I'm sure production will help on that. But the Scientist did die. So there is a secret live, whether it's barrier or ice block. We don't know till it happens. We're the same boat as the players. Or at least as Zixo.
And it's an interesting point you raise about staying alive, because throughout Hearthstone's history, as we are here to discuss, against Zoo, Freeze Mage was one of the best decks because there just wasn't enough pressure out of hand to finish off the game. It was all through board control, and Freeze was obviously incredibly good against that with the likes of Blizzard and Frostnova. And so I wonder if this is going to be the same thing, where obviously this deck's primary amount of damage is coming through board, but as you mentioned earlier, there is that added extra of being able to go Leroy Faceless with Power Overwhelming to push it over the finish line.
Yeah, it's definitely got a lot of reach. The issue is just the old ice block, right? Like, can you proc the block, open them up, and reach? That's a lot of boxes to tick. A lot of the time when wins happened with decks like this, it was very much they just didn't get ice block. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm pretty sure ice block's actually the barrier's live, right? Because the armor, the barrier proc. So ice block isn't live, and guess what? Ant doesn't have it, and he can't proc it. So if Zixo just comes out of nowhere in the next 2 turns and pushes enough damage, great. But as you quite rightly said, Blizzard can really stall these board-focused decks right now.
And no matter how you slice it for Ant, he is going to be taking damage over the next few turns. He cannot afford to simply freeze every turn and completely ignore the draw half of his deck. At some point, we're probably going to see Acolyte ping to try and get through to that ice block, as you said, to get through to that Emperor Thaurissan as well, potentially. And that's the window that Zixo needs. He needs to seize that opportunity to push some damage so that when he does get that burst potential through Leroy and Power Overwhelming, he can use it to close out the game rather than using it as a last-ditch effort to pop an ice block and then just die afterwards anyway.
And that was changed, right? If my memory serves. The Imp didn't used to be frozen, if that happened. If the Blizzard on the Imp Gang Boss, the Imp used to be free, right? Used to always deal 1.
Oh no, or was it? It was frozen, but that was weird, and that's why we're remembering it, because it felt like it shouldn't be frozen. Something like that.
I'm sure Twitch shall tell us in approximately 15 minutes.
I'm sure they will.
But yeah, I was pretty sure the Imp was always used to attack. It was always unfrozen. Okay. But I might just be wrong. I'm an old man now, Derek. I'm not like you, young and sprightly. I'm just an old man of Hearthstone right now. I'm living vicariously through this tournament, to be honest, just remembering the old days.
The good old days, yeah, when you were, relevant and casted HCT.
Wow. Well, what's kind of funny is me and Sol were talking about it last week, is that Admirable and Frodan cast week 1.
Right.
I believe anyway. And then I think it was Frodan and Falk, which doesn't count, but okay. Falk kind of hitched the butt. And then like me and Sol cast week 3, and now you're casting week 4. It's the history of casters too. As we're just moving on through the evolution of when the casters hit their stride. It's kind of funny. Who's going to be next? That's the key question, because I don't know anymore.
Oh, goodness. I
Oh,
guess
Dr. J, 100%. Yeah.
It got to be Dr. J, yeah.
Okay, well, touching back on the game, as Ant's on the verge of actually getting his first win on the board of this tournament.
And he really needs to worry now, as one of the core facets of Freeze Mage play is analyzing when am I going to be facing down the most damage? Do I Ice Block now because next turn I'll be facing down way more damage and I'll need to Frost Nova then? Or does he go for Frost Nova now? And clearly he is afraid of these ridiculous burst combos that are available in Wild. Like if he'd gone for Ice Block there and had his block popped, that would have been pretty dreadful, because then he would never have been able to go for Alexstrasza without just dying, most likely.
Yeah, it puts him in the checkmate position, right? If you Alex, you die from minions. If you don't Alex, then Hellfire, Dark Bomb. There's plenty of cards that actually just deal damage from hand. I do remember I do remember the old days of the Jiraxxus lethal with the weapon just off the top. That was nice when they just didn't have a secret because they went for something else. It's like, 3 damage, get him.
As Ant now, he was in a similar situation to last time where he couldn't quite justify ignoring the board completely, going for the Alexstrasza on this turn, especially because he didn't actually have the burst damage necessary to close out the game, even with the evolved Kobold. But now the card you mentioned earlier on for Sixto, the Lotheb is there, which is really the trump card in this matchup.
It is, yeah. The big deal is what Sixto wants to do right now, and this was a turning point in this matchup. In the past is you prot the block, and then you Lotheb.
Yes.
And then that guards the potential of the reblock. Because if they block again, they don't... Oh, okay, Sixto's just going against what I'm saying, so fine. But the normal idea was you prot the block, play Lotheb, and then they either reblock for 8 mana, as you can see what it would be now, and then they can't do anything else. So the idea is if you prot it last turn and they spend the turn doing nothing, you just proc it again, right? Yeah. Or they Alexstrasza if that's what they have, and then you can just keep pushing regardless, and there's no block live. But Sixto's actually played the Lotheb early. What do you think of this, Darren?
I think the reason that he's doing this, as we're seeing this perfectly play out, is because he has an answer to Alexstrasza. Because if you play a Lotheb when they clearly have an ice block up, they're going to use that opportunity to play Alexstrasza, which if Sixto had no healing, he'd be in a really bad spot now. He'd just be dead on the following turn. But because he's got Healbot into Farseer, he can heal himself way out of range of dying, because he obviously hasn't seen an Emperor Thaurissan yet. And then he could just follow up by pushing all this damage to face and trying to proc the ice block. Obviously, we can see now with the ice barrier thrown into play that isn't there. But I think it's a really nice play by Sixto to realize, you can't be too rigid in your play. Like, I totally agree with you that the optimum scenario is to pop the ice block and play Lotheb. But this is perfectly good enough, because the only good play for Ant in Alexstrasza has a pretty good answer.
It really does, but it's he does have to heal. My issue is, does this get a bit too tricky if you just have to spend your turn healing? Oh, where's he going to go here? Okay, it's going to go for the coil onto the Leroy. Oh, but that's a good one, don't it?
That is a very good one indeed. Sixto kind of taking a middle of the road play around what I was saying, because he obviously wants to pop the ice block on this turn as well. He's thinking, yes, I have the heal for Alexstrasza on this turn, but if I don't manage to pop the ice block on this turn, healing won't make any difference. I'll just be dead on the following turn anyway. I'm
really confused. Did he miss attacks? He did, right? Yes. He didn't attack with the Argus and the 1/1.
Yeah. But
most importantly, I think, is he could have procced it on 3. Because
why?
Of Hellfire in hand.
Oh, Hellfire. Oh, sorry. I thought you meant that 3 would have been better than 1. I was like...
No, I meant even if...
There, yes.
The big deal is it's 4 and not 3 health. Because now we can't Hellfire to just proc the ice block from hand.
So now for Ant with... oof, what, 610 add 6, 16 burst damage, I believe, on this turn available. And he's actually he's thinking, can he get the Alex Straza hit in? Is this just
pretty small damage, right? Wait, is this a 6-10? Oh, that's lethal.
Yeah, it's just lethal. Yeah. I'm ignoring the Alex Straza.
Brilliant. And that's going to be a quick 3-0. Wow. I honestly just don't quite know what happened, but it did. And Ant just 3-0s his match versus Sixto, finally getting a win on the board. And it felt like every single game was played out how Ant wants the matchups to play out, right? Do you know what I mean? Every deck he had just did its job to a perfect point. The Druid obviously getting the Moonfire was a big deal. And then the Warrior just gromming someone in the face like the good old days. And now the Freeze Mage just saying, actually, you're just dead. And it's pretty crazy, actually.
Yeah, everything just going his way. And maybe for Zixo, again, a case of, his favorite decks. Obviously, Reno Lock is often a favorite amongst the pros, but this is not Reno Lock at its height. We're still waiting for Gadget-san to get those Cabal cards in there like Kazakus to really get it up to the absolute heights of its power. So maybe a slight misread of what it could have been there. And even in that last game, I think you could argue for the line of play I was going for, for full healing, antique heal bot, and then worry about Alex Straza, or just kill the Alex Straza and worry about finishing off the game at a later point, not worrying about popping the ice block straight away. It was a volatile play from Zixo there and didn't work out for him, unfortunately.
Yeah, didn't seem too good for Zixo as he now goes 1-3, whereas Ant now is 1-3, which is a bonus for him as he gets the win on the board. And I believe we do have Ant on the line as well, so we'll get to talk to him. Hey, Ant, how's it going? You beautiful human being.
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Good. And I'm doing great, thanks, Ant. I really like your posters in the background as well. I don't know if I've ever told you this.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, these are my favorite animes. Bugs Life, classic anime.
Classic. The original, if anything.
Yeah,
let's talk about Hearthstone.
Okay.
Those 3 games obviously went really well for you. What was the idea with your lineup? Because it was a very sort of relatively slow but combo heavy lineup.
It was pretty much like, I don't know, I'm like 03. Kind of just wanted to play stuff that was very nostalgic for me. I like tanking up. I like killing a lot of people with Malagos. That's pretty much what I went for. I wanted a Yogg deck, so I played Malagos Druid. But yeah, I mean, like that's pretty much what I went for. Like, I just wanted to play decks that I just felt were good. I think Warrior was like the main one. Like, I was like, everyone's gonna play Freeze Mage. Like, this deck is nuts, so I'm gonna play Control Warrior. And I happened to snipe the good matchup. Have the soul read that he would QQ Freeze Mage.
And you didn't even need to tank up. You just killed him with Grom. You just got him.
I know, right? I just hit him with the weapons. Justicar hit, like, was dead.
How have you been enjoying the tournament? Because for me, this is my second week of casting now. It's been, and I've watched them all, of course, but it's been pretty nostalgic. Like, I actually didn't think I would feel this good about watching Hearthstone with decks from the past.
That's kind of what I felt like the idea was like, it was kind of be like a nostalgic thing. But I try to play Zoo every week, and every week everyone just has like 3 Zoo counters, man. Come on, man. Just let me play my flavors.
Maybe
this is the first week I don't think I played Zoo.
And you won.
I know, it's crazy.
Okay, well, congratulations on the first win again. It was pretty funny just watching a very swift 3-0 with some relatively slow decks, but good luck in the rest of the matches, and see you later.
Thank you.
Do have the slight delay over Skype call, of course, so please forgive us for that one. But yeah, let's just take a look at what we're up to so far. Just to remind anyone who's just come in, that was match 1 of today's matches that we've got coming up on week number 4. So League of Explorers, One Night in Karazhan, and Whispers of the Old Gods are all live. So as Anne mentioned, we have Yogg available, we have the Old Gods, we have Reno, but got off to a pretty crazy start so far, Derek.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about the power level of the expansions that have been brought in so far, and I mean, like, what expansions? Like, what have we seen from these expansions that have actually done anything? Like, Reno Jackson's done nothing. None of the old gods have done anything. It's just been smorking with control decks that's been the name of the game.
Yeah, Evolved Kobold was in the hand, I guess. Like that's something.
Yeah, that
Whispers
counts.
of the Old Gods, it did something, as in it was drawn, but that's about it. But as I said, this was just match number 1. We've got a few more matches coming up today or tonight, depending on where you are. But we are just going to go to a short 5-minute break while we just set up for the next match. So don't go anywhere, guys. This is History of Hearthstone. We'll be right back.
Greeting, traveler.
games.
The end is coming! Who am I?
Change your mind.
You require my assistance? We're gonna be rich.
Games.
Inferno! Require my assistance? Who am I?
Let me change your mind.
Welcome back, everyone. This is History of Hearthstone. As I was just distracted for a second, my bad, and apologies. I'm Raven, and joining me, who is nowhere near as distracted as me, is Derek. We've got another match coming up. We just had Ant just sweep Sixto with, in his words, just decks he felt nostalgic about. He wanted to do cool things with Malygos, with Freeze Mage, with Taunt Warrior. I keep getting lodged into stuff I've been playing recently. Tankub. Or Control Warrior. Well, let's take a look just to remind you of the expansions that have been added in this week. Got Whispers of the Old Gods, with the big old gods there, pretty huge impact cards themselves. Also, cards like Fandral, Staghelm, Thing from Below, and Flame Wreath Faceless, all pretty consistently played since they were released. We also have Karazhan as well, which we've not really touched on too much, but another small adventure with some high impact cards, Derek.
Yeah, Karazhan was one of the weirder expansions for me because, like you said, it was not a full expansion. It was only an adventure. So it brought in a lot less cards. And a lot of the cards in there I feel like it took a lot of time for them to find their true power level because at the start, obviously people thought Barnes would be powerful, but it kind of took a while to really find its true ridiculous power level. And even with cards like Medivh, Firelands Portal, right at the start, they really weren't seeing play all that much. Obviously the thing I must leave out of that argument is Shaman cards, because obviously the Shaman Karazhan cards were truly ridiculous. 1 mana Spirit Claws and Maelstrom Portal were absolutely auto includes in every Shaman deck. They were truly absurd.
I will say, just as weeks go on, this never gets old of the bottom right card in those graphics being basically Doug from production trying to just wind us up, as Purify was included as a key card from the Karazhan expansion. But what I will say is I do miss Medivh right now from the game. Medivh, one of my favorite cards of all time, because I felt like it opened up some options for every single archetype, every single deck. Yeah. It's like, do you want a kind of late game powerhouse? Do you build your deck around it? Do you just take the value where you can from Etiesh? It was just a great card to watch, and also it had the sprinkling of RNG that I think is just the right amount for the game, to be completely honest.
Absolutely. Still just my favorite play was Medivh into Moonglade Portal. Just what a beautiful series of plays. You get 2 6-mana minions, you heal for a bunch. Truly glorious. Or even just playing it as Medivh's first mate to start hitting them in the head with Etiesh.
Yeah, well, if you watched last week with myself and Soul, we heard about the nerfs just hurting Soul's soul, as they mainly, because of that one in from the top right, is Warsong Commander, who would not enable Patron Warrior Evolved, but we can't unnerf the cards, so this is a bit of a weird meta where the cards all are nerfed right now in the live version of the game, so that's what we're playing. But personally, Derek, I actually quite like it, because it means that the decks are just that ever so slightly different, or ever so slight difference in power level, even if they're copied from the past.
That's exactly right. Like, if it was the original Hearthstone experience, we all know it would just be Druid dominance right from the start. Like, they've had so many cards nerfed over their history with the likes of Innovate, Ancient of Lore that we see there. It would just be a little bit too powerful, even with the Force of Nature Savage Roar thrown in there as well. There are some nerfs that kind of, hurt me a little bit personally that we saw there on the first page. There were some decks that I really, really liked, but that sadly cannot be played in this instance now.
Every time I stare at Starving Buzzard, I'm just like,
oh no,
wow. You like put a really big nail in that bird. It just nailed it into the ground with that nerf back. But what I will say, just touching back on the expansions as well, so maybe we didn't talk about too much with Medivh and with Babbling Book, is that Karazhan, almost a world championship defining expansion, right? You look at Pavel with the Babbling Book. You look at the Firelands Portal, which created Leroy, in which I nearly blew my voice out at the World Championships there, because that was just an absurd moment. Like, these were huge, big deals, and kind of a defining point in Hearthstone, actually, and that World Championship, as I do believe that Pavel's win was probably the craziest run for him throughout the whole tournament, as he often went 0-2 down in matches and then somehow won them anyway.
That's right. And I mean, that's why a lot of players were happy to see Karazhan go. It did have some of the more hated cards throughout Hearthstone's history. Obviously, Barnes being the flagship of terrible cards that should really never really have found their way in. It was just too defining of a bunch of decks like Spellhunter and Big Priest, to name a few, that we may be seeing coming back in later weeks, because I believe, though I am not a wild player myself, From the snippets I see from streams and whisperings on Twitter, Big Priest does kind of seem to be truly disgusting there.
Yeah, just a little bit. Just to let you know, guys, as well, sorry, is that we, unfortunately, the players aren't ready for match 2. So we're not going to wait. We're not going to mess around. We're actually going to go to match 3 with Just Saiyan and Zalae. We're going to skip forward in time. We know you love Hearthstone, we know, but we do want to watch and cast some Hearthstone for you lovely people at home. So we are going to be just sorting out Just Saiyan and Zalae. Zalae currently 2-1, Just Saiyan 1-2. And Zalae, one of the players, especially last week, we were talking about how he's actually really enjoyed this tournament. Some of the players are saying, oh, you know, it's a lot of fun playing nostalgic stuff, so on. Zalae's like, oh no, I've been like full prep mode, full try-hard mode. He wants to win the tournament, and that's kind of just Zalae as a person as well. Yeah. I think highly competitive, one of the best players in America, no doubt. But also, again, I think it's his drive to say, oh, this is something new and it's a tournament, I'm in. You know, easy as that.
Yeah. I feel like for Zalae, like when you talk to him about Hearthstone, it's just like he's got a big brain and he just needs somewhere to point that big brain, be it through standard, like if that's challenging, brilliant. If it's when he competed in chess, brilliant. Even when he was doing the kind of monster hunt with Time Tinkerer Toki, where you could infinitely refresh your hero powers with Beardo, like he was like, this is the funnest thing I've ever done in Hearthstone, because he just wanted to break it. Like he wanted to figure out what was the absolute optimum strategy. And you say, oh sorry,
I was gonna say, I actually think a lot of people who love Hearthstone and say card games in general, they love it because they want to break the game.
Right.
That's like literally why people enjoy it most of the time.
Yeah.
Most players, it's like, why an expansion is so exciting? What busted stuff can I do with these cards that no one's ever played with before? And that's pretty much what this is as well, because the meta is just so slightly different in this tournament that it means that what stuff can I do to break the game? Yeah, and it's kind of fun watching the players come out with stuff, mainly just remembering that all the complaints we've had in the past, the complaints we have today about, oh, this deck's too strong, this deck's so on. Do you remember cards like Raven Idol getting a third Moonfire from Malagos? Like, do you remember that?
That'll do it. Yeah.
Oh, it's pretty nuts. But as I said, we do just have the players getting ready. We'll see if we can go back to match number 2, maybe a little bit later on. But for now, can't get hold of the players. There are so many players traveling for HCT tournaments. I know the Seoul on this weekend, which will be a pretty big deal. There are some players in China. Basically, just throw some half players up on a globe, see where they land, and that's probably where they are, to be honest.
That's right, and that's what we want from this year's Hearthstone. With this many tour stops, the point is that it's a truly global celebration of Hearthstone with people flying all over the world. But to be honest, I'm not even too sad about it, because if I had to choose 2 players I want to see playing Hearthstone right now, Zalae and Saiyan would definitely be super high up on that list, because obviously Zalae's had a lot of success recently, second place at Austin just over the weekend. But Saiyan's kind of an interesting storied player himself, because he's, the anchor for Americas in HGG. So clearly he's been pulling his weight this year. But he's still the only Tempo Storm player now to not, or out of the 3 main players in Muzzy, Amnesiac, and Saiyan, he's the only one to not have won a tour stop. So a little bit to prove for himself maybe in the immediate, and hopefully we'll see some more of him from that in Seoul over the weekend.
It's something that we were talking about last week, that Saiyan is just quietly one of the best players. Unfortunately hasn't won anything yet, because it's like, I don't think anyone doubts his ability, and his performance actually in tournaments and DreamHacks, etc. is good. It's just never been quite good enough on the day. I think the overall win ratio that Saiyan has is actually relatively high. So he's got it. He just needs to wait until that moment, And again, no one doubts his ability. And this might be the time if he can get some wins on the board. But he's falling a little bit as we see both the players just getting ready there. Zalae back at home, got the pull-up bar ready to go. He did have the Miss Lethal at DreamHack. So one of the things that did tickle me a little bit was the spam in chat of saying that's going to be a lot of pull-ups, Zalae, to make up for it. So we'll see what happens tonight. I'm sure he's laser focused as always. And again, Paladin and Warrior bands coming out here. So we are going to see a Paladin from Zalae, potentially. And just saying no Warrior, but Druid, Shaman, Warlock. I feel like these are 3 of the most powerful classes at the moment.
Yeah, this surprises me quite a lot, actually, because obviously we saw the power of Warrior in the last match between when Ant got his truly ridiculous game against Sixto against the Freeze Mage. But as he said, that's the matchup you want to nail. That's the unlosable matchup almost in this instance. But for Saiyan, he doesn't have the mage. He's the first player we've seen tonight to not bring that. So banning the warrior away does make me question it a little bit more. I do remember if that is a Malagos druid for Saiyan against the control warrior, that could get a little bit dicey because maybe you don't have quite enough damage to push through. But in terms of armoring up, health gain, we can just push all of that out the window because we got ourselves an aggro mech shaman mirror.
Yep, and this is where we were sort of half talking about as the decks are going to start looking a bit weird this week because decks like these were not playable.
That's right.
Or at this point where the expansions are available. What I will say is this whirring Zap-O-Matic has led to one of the fastest games of Hearthstone I've ever seen, and I believe was it World Champs with Firebat?
I couldn't tell you exactly.
I'm so annoyed I don't remember perfectly because I should, but I believe there was a game, and I think it was at Worlds, where Firebat just turn 3'd him because he had 2 Rockbiter weapons and just absolutely nailed him with whirring Zap-O-Matic, which is absolutely amazing. But look at the power on board already.
Oh my god, this is so disgusting. Oh, Totem Golem was just absolutely absurd. As Saiyan here gets off to a blistering start, we'll be able to follow up with on this turn. I mean, if he believes he's cleared the runway, as it were, for whirling Zap-O-Matic, you just throw it down here. It leads to a stronger turn on the following turn, obviously, because you're not overloaded. And you just want to get in that damage as quick as possible here.
So look at whirring Zap-O-Matic. It's about to die, Garrick. Did you look at it?
I looked at it.
Did you realize that they actually have lightsabers and it's not lasers?
Really?
Well, the top one, the golden version, is red, correct? The non-golden version, lasers, are green.
Right. So
they're holding lightsabers. When you look at it, you might think they're lasers shooting. They're not. They're lightsabers. I'm not even joking, though.
You're not even joking. But like lightsabers don't zap. They vroom.
Well, that's just his name. Right?
Yeah, but like
his name's Zap.
So it's nothing to do with what he does. His name is just whirling Zap-O-Matic. His dad was whirling Dave-O-Matic.
Yeah, I don't raven, do I? It's just my name. Derek? You don't Derek. I didn't know that's a verb.
Oh, I Derek on the reg. Like, you should see
me. Okay.
You cannot stop me.
Is that some form of terrible dab? Is that like a British dab? Is the Derek?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, millennials dab. Generation X, they're gonna Derek. Trust me, it's gonna be all the rage.
Hopefully, I'll be gone by then. But anyway, let's talk about the game just a little bit more. Maybe this might just be over at this point. Feral Spirit is the old school Saranite chain gang, but yes, there's Crackle. There's a lot of burn available. But can a lot of burn beat Tunnel Trog and double Totem Golem? Because if this burn is used as removal, which I'm sure it has to be right now, roll for 3, go. Then the question is, can he come back? The weapon in Zap-O-Matic, though, actually, I'm not going to lie to anyone, I kind of forgot what the death rattle did on the weapon. And now this looks like a little bit better, so I'll hold my hands up. It's more of a game now.
Yeah, absolutely. This is just everything that people hated about Hearthstone. Like, obviously, we get some awesome flashbacks to the past with the history of Hearthstone, but it's worth remembering, it was not a perfect game in the olden days. There was stuff like Crackle knocking about, where if that had missed, Zalae would have just lost. So I am very happy indeed that it's kind of become a game again, and he's not just completely out of it. Because in this scenario, with the spirit, the wolves here that you can throw down, like you said, the old school chain gang, and being able to fit in the lightning bolt as well to really lock down the board, he's not in that bad of a spot, actually.
Really not. And this is what a lot of Shaman mirrors in this era looked like. It was just fight for board, fight for board, fight for board. Maybe slightly different because of these mech interactions, but in general, the second you lose the board for more than one turn, you probably lose the game at that point. And also, this game specifically, based off this Finley, let's see what hero power you can get, actually, because this is a big deal. This might almost make this a Hunter-style game. Because Zalae's got such a life difference now on the 18. You can do the Hunter thing where, say, like in a Hunter mirror, you're so far ahead that you just win because they can never catch up. They either trade the board and you deal damage to them anyway with hero power, or they don't trade the board and they die. And that might be the point that Zalae's at right now.
Absolutely, and beautifully sequenced there by saying the fact that, you know, he left himself open to the possibility of going hero power that he gained instead of the flame tongue. Maybe if he'd gotten mage or druid hero power, he could have just saved the flame tongue and used it on that turn, but leaving himself open to go for the flame tongue as well, as we saw, given that he got a non-damaging hero power. But as we saw the well played from Zalae, we can clearly see, you know, this is what Saiyan wants. He was at 30 health, so there's not really that much of a downside at all for the damage from the life tap that he's got thus far, and just getting himself closer to those cards like Rockbiter, like Lava Burst to close out the game is exactly what he needs.
It's a big deal because he got life tap, which is an insane, arguably best hero power in the game. He also got life tap with the life lead, right? Like if Zalae got life tap, it's still good, but he could just die from double lava burst soon. You know what I mean? Whereas Saiyan could just tap every single turn, try and get onto this board. I will say though, Zalae has the board, and this could add up to a lot of damage, because if he goes Feral Spirit and Zap, we can see that this has to be like, what, spell damage into Maelstrom to just kill the Zap-O-Matic. Never mind the Feral Spirits. That's a huge deal.
It is indeed, and very conservative play from Saiyan, because obviously none of the cards in his hand really do all that much. Like the Maelstrom Portal, just to do 1 damage to a minion that doesn't even die. They might be able to trade into the 1-drop that you get. It can go very wrong very quickly. So saving this back to try and get a wide board sweep does make a lot of sense to me here, but he's going to have to start doing some stuff pretty impressively, because while I was saying at 30 health, the damage from life tap doesn't make any difference, it's slowly starting to creep down, and he will be taking a lot of damage.
Oh, Shifter Zerus.
Not the one.
Come on. 1-1. I'd rather get like a tiny fin from that or something.
Yeah, at least then it's cute.
What's really funny is, as we mentioned it, you know, maybe we should mention it again this week, is that any random effects, we cannot stop them pulling new minions that are not part of this rotation. So there could have been other 1-drops in there. You know, there could have been newer 1-drops that come out, but nope. Good old Shifter Zerus from Whispers of the Old Gods, if my memory serves.
It would appear your memory serves you well, as Zalae is surprisingly left with a lot of options at this point, because usually the player on the back foot in these kind of aggro mirrors, they have less options, because they have to use, as we saw from Zalae consistently, they have to use all their burst on removal. So they're usually using their cards very inefficiently just to stay alive. But he ended up with a very similar hand size to his opponent, even though he doesn't have life tap, and way more stuff on the board. So now that he's got that Doom Hammer and the Lava Burst, of 2 of the most oppressive cards in an aggro shaman deck, he's just going to be able to start pushing a lot of damage towards his opponent, maybe just winning the race.
He is, yeah. That Neutron is a big deal, though.
It's
because it just means it's got to soak up enough hits that Zalae maybe can't get through a lot of damage. That, indeed. What's that? That's
Klingon.
16, and he can punch through the taunts if he goes Doomhammer Flame Tongue.
Woo. Wow, you're right. Oh man, I mean, like,
wow, I didn't like the way you said that, Derek.
No.
Wow, you're actually right, Raven.
Oh my god.
Whatever Sol says, I am right sometimes. Jeez.
Yeah, he prepped me for just like, don't listen to him. He might say something, it's a lie. It's always wrong.
The thing is, I think you're joking, but I'm only got as far as think you're joking. I'm not like, yeah, of course
like
you can say that.
90% sure.
Yeah, fairly confident.
And it looks to me like Zalae is going to be going all in on the offensive.
I like it.
Yeah, realizing he can win here. His opponent only is going to have 2 cards maximum. Ooh. So what is he going to have to get to keep him alive?
You kill Trog, right? Killing Trog's correct. Because here, if it's Lava Burst, tap Lava Burst, you lose.
Yeah, but like...
Right, but you win.
You never lose here. Yeah, I guess
you never lose here, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. You have 4 damage to put him to 6 anyway, just with Doomhammer. And then, put him to 7. And then, how does Saiyan clear this board with 2 cards? He just doesn't, especially because the Creeper and Zalae gonna get off to a win there. And it looked pretty good for Saiyan, but a few whiffs on the taps there, just not enough. When you look at Zalae, drew cards like Azure Drake, it replaces itself. Feral Spirit, ton of value in 1 card. Creeper, Flame Tongue, so on. Whereas Saiyan had the mech aspect of, okay, Mech Warper,
right,
Cogmaster,
never came to
pass. Yeah, he never really got there, unfortunately, because Zalae Looked like he was quite ahead for quite an amount of time there.
He did. I think maybe like the biggest, the thing I would change in terms of how I analysed that match was I thought Finley Mergleton on turn 5. I was like, perfect. You can fit in a double hero power. That's an amazing turn. It's actually not. You've only played a 1-3 on turn 5, which is an incredibly low tempo swing. And I think that's really what let Saiyan down there is, he did have a very good game plan in the late game with life tap, but that's if he had dealt enough damage in the early turns, and his early turns weren't quite good enough to justify a life tap being taken there. I mean, we didn't actually get to see the other options there, and I would anticipate that it was still correct to take the life tap because, if he'd gotten himself a Doom Hammer and a Lava Burst, he might have been able to take it, but his tempo was just a little bit too low in the later stages of the game, as we saw, because he definitively lost board control. Yeah,
it depends what the deck looks like as well, right? But for example, again, say one of those draws from tap was an Azure Drake. Suddenly, instantly the board looks a lot nicer for him because he draws another card. He has a beefy minion on board. It just looks better with one good draw, but I think he just changed draws that didn't work well enough together at any point. Like Flamewreath Faceless, which was his last draw. If he'd got that 3 turns ago, suddenly again, it looks a little bit more scary. But enough about that. More about the rest of this match. Zalae now on what appears to be the secret paladin and just saying on the shaman again. And I'll be honest, Derek, and I'm interested to see where you land on this one. Secret paladin is still one of my favorite decks I've ever played. And yes, there are games you just derp them, and it's just like 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, 4 drop, 5 drop, mysterious chance to get wrecked. But I actually really liked the deck. It was just fun, and some games were very, very intricate on how you played them out.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like you said, the mysterious challenger, what it said was if you're ahead on board when you play this, you win, as Lotheb also kind of did in this deck. But sometimes you don't draw the exact perfect curve. Sometimes you do, though. Sometimes you get 1 drop, 2 drop muster for battle, and you fill in the rest along the way. But now I suppose, obviously for Zalae, we can see his next few turns are pretty easily mapped out. You just play your stuff here and try to stay ahead. For Saiyan, it becomes a lot more interesting because he's got a hell of a lot of options in the early game, and he's got a lot of powerful options in the early game as well.
Yeah, it's like a pretty solid start from both players here. I will just quickly rewind back as Neriah has informed me that the turn 3 lethal was at DreamHack Bucharest with its Firebat versus Sivka. That's where I remember it from because I cast it, I think. But yeah, that was insane. Turn 3 with the wearing Zap-O-Matic and Rock Biters was huge. But anyway, the muster for battle. This card was OP.
I will agree with you there, Raven.
Nice. Finally, I found someone to cast with that agrees with me. Haha! Sol has now been replaced.
With a soundboard of Derek with only one button that says, I agree.
Yeah, oh my god, that'd be so sick. Okay, next time I'm casting something, I don't want cameras, and I'm just going to pretend I'm casting with you, and all I have is that button.
Or you have a camera, but it's actually just a long shot of your room where you have a hand puppet as well, motioning for me.
Yeah. That's me, Darren Brownie. How are you feeling? You are correct. I'm like, good. So you're feeling well. You are correct.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree. You feeling good? I agree. Oh, okay, well, let's go with the game. Pilot shredder placement.
Yeah, he's. It has to be said every time on History of Hearthstone, doesn't it? You can't get away with it. But Saiyan making some interesting plays here, because obviously on the previous turn, the default option I was looking at was your opponent just played Muster for Battle, so you play Maelstrom Portal. That's like what you do in order to lock out that power turn from your opponent. But he feels he can get stronger value from it later on, would rather get the Death Rattle from the weapon itself on a mech, which, does make a lot of sense. This is an incredibly annoying minion that's been thrown down here in the Annoyatron itself. And at any point in this game, I think what Saiyan is saying is Maelstrom Portal will be really good. It will never not be good in this game.
Yeah, there's always going to be targets for it as well. I think it's a very powerful shredder from Zalae, though, as it made, it's almost like a Russian doll mini shredder in form of this this granny. And I will say, thank you, Shredder. You are staying within the rule boundaries of the tournament, as this card was releasing Karazhan, which is...
Oh, man, that was so disgusting. Kylie Grandmother was such a good card, man.
Yep. Oh, look, check the Zap-O-Matic again. Red laser.
Evil. All right, fair enough, mate.
Whirring Sith-O-Matic. I don't think they got that through copyright. This is a scary board, and all really down to that granny, to be honest. Like, imagine if that just wasn't there. It's still 5/5 in form of Lothar, but 2/1/1s wouldn't look as scary now. And Saiyan's not got a lot to fight back. This Maelstrom is just stranded because of the Lothar effect, and suddenly trade off. Can get Avenge live, right? I was working out whether you want to try and like create a redemption onto Lothar for the damage, but just play stuff and play Avenge and Redemption, right? It's just so much power.
And man, this is such an interesting point in the game, because at the start I was honestly anticipating Zalae to just run away with the game. He got the perfect curve here with 1 through 5, but at this point Saiyan has been using his weapons very aggressively with his health total. He's obviously taking a tremendous amount of damage, but it's meant that he's kept up very well on board, and he's also got a decent hand size. So as soon as he does manage to stabilize, if he can without dying, he's not actually looking in that bad of a position. If he can find a feral spirit of his own to at least block some of this damage, or maybe just leave the secrets unactivated, as you often saw against the secret paladin, to lower their overall power on that immediate turn, this maybe isn't over for Saiyan.
Yeah, speaking of the secret power, though, I will say with double redemption draw, it does mean that a Mysterious Challenger turn is slightly less powerful because it will not pull a redemption. So that's one of the things that kept this deck in check to a certain extent, right? It was, well, you don't ever want to draw one of these 7 cards you've put in the deck of 30. You know, like that's a little bit scary. Also, as well, the deck commonly plays Dr. Boom. It can play Greg sometimes as well. I'm not exactly sure what Zalae's makeup is, but there's still some late game pressure. Maybe some weapons as well, and I think that's what Zalae's banking on now. He isn't messing about trading stuff. Go face, he has Avenge. That's a lot of power when, as you said, Saiyan's used his life quite aggressively and has life tap.
Right. And I think that's an interesting point you bring up, is that people realized with this deck that, you know, the secrets in Paladin do kind of suck, but they only suck when you don't have a board. If you can consistently guarantee that you will have some kind of a board, they're really not that bad, because here, you know, for Zalae, it was +1, +3, +2, and a 1/1, which is fine if you're just looking to close out the game.
Yeah, and again, imagine Redemption there. Instead of reading Resurrect effectively a 1/1 that turn, imagine if it just says one of your opponent's attacks does nothing.
Right.
Sick! Like, this is a really good card. Yes, I would play that card.
Yeah.
It's the buff on the Whirring Zap, though. There's Mr. Tyrion, but there's 10. The big deal here is he can't actually kill the Zap-O-Matic, which is activating the Cogmasters. So that's what, 16, that's 18, 19, 20, that's 22 that
22
we can see.
damage. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, which is, you know, incredibly scary. Like, one lava burst off the top would close out the game. If Zalae does target everything through to the face, which I would be very unsurprised by, there will be no life tap, however, available for Saiyan, because they'll only be on 2 health, so it's just what he can get off the top here, I would imagine, to close
This
things
is a
out.
tough call, right? Do you put the 1/1 into the 2/1? Ever?
Okay, so...
This, you still need a token to live.
Yeah, you do.
So you either say 1 token will live, or you need 2 tokens to live to guarantee lethal next turn, unless there's taunt, of course. So, he's putting the weapon in. Okay. So he's reducing the board down whilst keeping his as big as possible, which means it's more likely. And if the Whirring Zap-O-Matic goes into 2 1/1s, you're feeling pretty good about life. But what I was thinking was, if everything trades in, your weapon gets there anyway. If it doesn't trade in, your minions get there. If they half trade in, well, you have redemption. So it negates one of the trades anyway, which should get you lethal next turn. So I thought putting the 1/1 in was actually a kind of checkmate scenario, but so is this to a certain extent.
Saiyan here having to trade incredibly aggressively at this point, because Zalae allowed him to have the life tap, which Saiyan decided to take. He did not have to tap there, because obviously he's at 1 health now. Like, your health is so important, but he realizes there's an incredibly low amount of burst damage in the deck. But clearly for Zalae, that little bit of extra trading that he would have to do, I think he figured out there was lethal on board anyway. So while, I don't know, maybe not a perfect optimization from Zalae, it could just be cast division getting to me, because obviously I can see it was very unlikely for lethal damage to be drawn on the following turn, but he had no idea.
Yeah, and I will say again, like, the redemption's kind of doing that job again. When each tiny attack is so important, redemption just says that attack didn't happen, because they're all 1/1s anyway, is actually pretty huge because it means that the Annoytron wouldn't be enough with all the trades. And even if it would be, then you're not doing any damage to face, and there was too much damage to try and catch up with. So Zalae takes a win there as well. So that's a 2-0. Are we just doing 3 zeros all day today, Derek? I feel like it might be the case.
It could very possibly be. I mean, saying his Shaman, I don't know what to say. Like, its starts really haven't been that bad. Like, he's got Totem Golem in his starting hand both times. He's had Cogmasters knocking around there towards the start as well. Like, his hands haven't been that bad, but Zalae has just had that little too much board dominance to be able to push through. But for Saiyan, with his for Zalae's last deck that Saiyan has to take down, I would imagine it's another Freeze Mage, as that was by far, from what I remember, the most powerful mage that we had in Hearthstone at the time, which might be a significantly more favorable matchup for the Aggro Shaman.
Yeah, and I will say as well, this is almost like hybrid Aggro Shaman. So
that's true.
The mech wasn't part of this package at the time. This deck ran Tuskar Totemic, which could summon a Totem Golem on turn 2 or 3, depending. Also, as you mentioned earlier, the claws, right? The lightning claws were huge. And I imagine these decks aren't playing those cards because they're just not good enough with the nerf. So that's a big deal. A 1-mana potential 3/3 weapon is absurd for damage, and we've seen the games go pretty close. But Zalae, not on the Freeze Mage. Good old Flame Waker.
Good old Tempo Mage. And I believe I'm actually allowed to call it Tempo Mage this time without Neil or Sottle shouting at me, as I always do nowadays, because this deck does want to lock down early game damage. You don't really have enough of those burst spells yet to make it a pure face deck, obviously with a Luneth not available yet either. But if you do want to fight for board control early on, Tunnel Trog into Feral Spirit is not a board that you can actually really get board control against.
Yeah, not with this hand anyway. It's a little bit unfortunate for Zalae. He does have a lot of damage, but yeah, as you mentioned earlier, I think Flame Waker hit killing minions with its ability is just as good as damage to face in this deck, right? Whereas in current versions of Aggro Mage, I call it, you always want to go face 9 times out of 10, right? To just get that burn through. But Mirror Entity picking up the Trog, but still, it's going to be a tough one. I think we're going to see the trade here.
Do you think? Like, what does it do? What does a 1/3 actually do against this deck?
It doesn't die to the Feral Spirit. That's what would bother me. Maybe just go face. I mean, to be fair, Flame Tongue, Power Mace, and Zap-O-Matic, like, that's a lot of face damage once you get that cooking.
Yeah, I think, Saiyan is obviously making the first step of, this does not die to my Feral Spirit, which is bad, but it doesn't kill anything. Like, Mage doesn't deal damage in blocks of 2 anyway, like it does it in blocks of 3, because you will have Flame Valet now, Frostbolt.
Since it deals exactly 2 damage every spell. I'm only winding you up, mate. I'm just being an arse.
You're doing a blooming good job of it as well, may I say.
Thank you. Now you know how Sol feels.
What is this living hell?
Wow.
Joking, of course, mate. I'm just winding you up.
Yeah. But now you felt both sides of the coin. One at HCT casting with Sol, and one now casting with me.
I feel like Malcolm in the blooming middle.
Yeah, you're the child in the divorce of me and Sol. You have to pick a parent to live with.
Wait, what? You and Sol are getting divorced?
No, we're not.
Oh, okay.
Well, not as far as I'm aware. Do you know something I don't know, Derek? Okay, well, this is kind of spiraled a little bit out of control. We've said this, I feel like, both previous games of this match, but now I think Saiyan's got it. I'm willing to go a little bit in. This is too much for the mage to deal with. And also, we talked about RDU at DreamHack, I want to say summer 2016, with the Flame Strike, double Flame Strike tempo mage that he won with. But this is 2 turns away from Flame Strike, even if Zalae is running it. Yeah, that sums it up, Derek.
It does indeed. I'm just trying to... I'm thinking of any scenario in which Zalae can pull this back, but this is just a perfect example of what made Shaman so good, was that it just did the best things you could do in the early turns. Like, if you went for Tunnel Trog into any kind of overload card like this, you didn't really ever win because it was too powerful in the early game, which is why it saw play against... consistently across that year before the year of the Mammoth started.
Yeah, had the best first 3 turns in the game, and guess what? The first 3 turns in most games of Hearthstone are actually the first 3 most important turns, should I say? But that is going to be game. No ice block there for Zalae. This is the Tempo Mage, and Saiyan finally getting a win with that Shaman at last. So it is not going to be a sweep. I cursed it. We've got more time yet, Derek, but Saiyan is fighting back, and we get to see a different deck now. Saiyan's played that Shaman, what, 3 times?
Yeah.
In total?
Finally picking up a win there with a truly disgusting start. And I think well played as well. You know, going pure face there was what led him to a even quicker victory. Just gave it absolutely no time at all because, you know, maybe there was double Flame Strike in that list or even just one Flame Strike to clear off that kind of board control that's so important, it seems, in this meta. But for Zalae, maybe with this Tempo Mage, it could be the weak point for him because at this point in this meta, obviously this is, again, not a meta that actually existed in Standard because we still have GVG and Naxxramas thrown in there. But what could be done in the early turns with Tunnel Trog, Totem Golem, Mad Scientist as well? There was so much power in those early few turns that maybe the Tempo Mage just can't quite keep up.
Yeah, I think, to be completely honest, it had to be Mana Worm as an answer to Tunnel Trog, right? To have any real chance of actually keeping up. But let's go into game number 2. Looks a little bit better.
Yeah.
For Zalae's Mad Scientist is huge, but also that Flame Waker Arcane Blast. Zalae not on the coin, but maybe Ant gets to see Zoo win a game of Hearthstone in this tournament so far. Although Ant didn't bring it this time, Saiyan's got it in the books, got it on the board now. He does have Possessed Villager and one of my other favorite cards, along with Haunted Creeper. Look how sticky this board is going to be already. Ooh.
This is giving me the shivers. This is 2 absolutely devastating.
Good shivers or bad shivers, Derek?
Good shivers.
Okay.
Good shivers.
So we have to wait till after 9 o'clock for those kind of shivers, Derek. Derek, sorry?
The PG kind of shivers.
Yeah.
As I mean, both players here have got a truly devastatingly starting hand. For Saiyan, he can lock down the early board very easily, obviously with this Direwolf Alpha. But for Zalae, if he could get one more cheap spell, maybe an Arcane Missiles if it's knocking about in the deck, or something like a Mirror Image, which we sometimes saw in these deck lists, he could make that giant tempo swing that he needs to pull things back. And now that he's got Lotheb as well, if he gets board control, he can just keep it.
Well, I think he makes it now, right? He can just use Valet and Arcane Blast and leave a 1/1 on the board.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I completely understand why you're a highly rated analyst in Hearthstone. It's like, I could do this. That is a good play. That sounds like analysis I would make. Come on.
I mean, am I wrong, Raymond?
This is the exact excuse I use.
I'm learning from the best.
Well, okay, can't argue with lovely compliments like that. So let's get back to the game. Peddler, super powerful card. Oh god, do you remember Reliquary Seeker? I actually forgot that was even a card.
So did I.
Wow. Yeah. That was a deck at DreamHack a long time ago.
Yeah, that was like
the Giants, right?
Played. Yeah, just for a very short amount of time, and it was pretty good when it was knocking about. But for Zalae, again, in that awkward scenario where, as it always felt in these Tempo Mage decks, you had the potential for extreme early game dominance with something like Mana Worm or Apprentice into Arcane Blast. But then around turns 3, 4, 5, it took a little while for your power turns to take off again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this implosion is going to be pretty big. If he gets the 4, that's just... Oh, no, saying shake. Oh, wait. Why was Saiyan shaking his head at getting 4?
Because he felt bad.
Yeah, he's like, oh, God, sorry, Zalae. We are friends.
I did not deserve this.
Not much Zalae can really do is the Lotheb coming down is just about as good a turn as he's going to get. If he played anything else, then it would mean that these imps actually just trade into his 2 minions he has. So at least Lotheb lives on board. And now he might have some decent follow-up. Effigy and a potentially future second secret from Mad Scientist, but that's double PO and a Mr. Leroy Jenkins in Saiyan's hand. God, that was... People think decks are powerful right now.
Do they?
Double PO! Okay, maybe not right now, before the nerfs.
Before the nerfs, I will agree with you there. Yeah. Yeah, this was the juice. This was what you wanted to do. Like one of my favorite decks ever was, I believe it was one that Eloise perfected and hit rank 1 legend with, was like the Arcane Golem PO plus faceless deck, where it was just that. Like you played no threats, you just played Emperor Thaurissan, you went for that full 32 damage combo. It was a thing of beauty to behold.
It really was. And hey, Roller Seeker. It really was, because I think people might have forgotten that during this time period, you just died a lot of the time. Like you were just dead. There was not a lot. I'm on 20 dead. It's like people used to be upset about Anduin, doing the big burst. It's like, guys, this used to happen in more than one deck. It's like, this is Thunderbolt of Valiant, one of the few Inspire cards to actually have some impact in the game.
Yeah.
And a pretty chunky card as well from Effigy there. It's like, it's just a 3/6 to beat Zoo with.
That's exactly right. And that's just what Zalae's looking for here, because he's definitely not going to be going on the offensive quite yet. He's going to be playing super defensive to try and shore up this board control, because he has to know, even if there isn't the truly obnoxious kind of power burst cards that we can see Saiyan actually has, just this damage on board is going to kill him over the next couple turns no matter what.
So real talk, does the Frostbolt go into the 5/5 here and then he just goes face with the Thunderblow?
I don't think you can, because if you go for that and they push through at least 6 damage on this turn, do you ever win that race? Because you don't ever set up 2-turn lethal unless you... I guess you could draw Fireball off the top.
Yeah, if you're pushing that much damage, though, the Drake probably lives and the Thunderbluff probably lives, right? That's 10 health on board.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm just wondering if you think you can outlast in value versus Zoo.
I like the thinking, because Zalae is obviously not in a very good spot here. He's going to have his minions probably killed off by whatever Saiyan has in hand. Doesn't have all too much in his hand to be working with. So maybe he has to rely on top decks to take the game, just by going all damage to face and then get Fireball off the top. But clearly we can see Saiyan here will be pushing forward. Not lethal on this turn, but he can just clear up what he needs to and plow face with the rest. Or is this
and no, is it? Oh yeah, I didn't count it.
Exactly.
I don't know. I trust you, Derek. You're like, yeah, which is, it's not going to be lethal this turn.
It was very good.
There is a lethal. Saiyan evens it up 2 and 2. But yeah, I mean, we could obviously see that the Leroy was there, the second PO was there, all the damage in the world that Saiyan needed. But I do wonder that, does killing the juggler really change that much? You have 10 health on board. That's a lot of juggle soaks. If there's a trade in and then somehow another implosion would be probably worst case, but you've already seen one. I don't know. I think if you go aggressive and just say, well, need Fireball, need something to just go face with and hope, maybe it can get there. Because I don't know, but did the Glyph was in Karazhan, right?
Glyph was on Goro. That's on Goro.
Oh, Glyph was on
Still in
Goro.
standard. Yeah.
Right, of course. Yeah, so it's actually one less potential out. So yeah, okay, it was a close call, but it doesn't matter.
It was very close.
I was going to say we should stop living in the past, but this is History of Hearthstone, so maybe we should. But yeah, Mage versus Druid now.
This is going to be another interesting one, because typically in Hearthstone, one of the matchups you kind of needed to learn was that against most Druid decks, most Tempo Mages were pretty good. Like, Tempo Mage usually locked down the board too much early on. Druid didn't have enough answers. This is, going in blind as to what Just Saying Druid is. I anticipate it's going to be another Malagos Druid, because I'm racking my brains for the other real powerful Druids at the time, and there wasn't all too much going on.
Token's not good till next expansion.
With Mark of the Lotus.
Yeah. And also the biggest thing here was that just the mirror entity for Mage was often the
that's true.
point, right? Because Druid had no small minions. So mirror entity just always hit something big, which was insane. Does look like it's Token Druid though, with Power of the Wild. I mean, there's still Valid Teacher, there's still Living Roots, there's Power of the Wild, so doable.
I mean, it's just like not a bad set of cards to be locking down the board, as it is clearly some variant of a token Druid. which this is, like I said, these are just decent cards. Like Living Roots just for 2 1/1s at the start, or maybe to kill off a Mana Worm to get things going. Violet Teacher demands an answer. So for Zalae, if he has to spend an entire turn killing it off, that could be pretty bad.
Is this Arcane Giants? Because they were in Charizard, right?
You're right, it is.
Yeah. Oh, God, this is
man.
like on top of us casting, we have to do like, Hearthstone history trivia as to what deck in a very weird meta is the deck that was played. And I believe this looks like, Gadgets and Arcane Giant tokens to me. With that Moonfire give it away.
I loved Arcane Giants.
They were actually just good cards. There are some
Just
cards I
great
wish they would
cards.
actually move to standard.
Yeah, that's one of them.
Or like classic, whatever.
Yeah. As I was saying, Saiyan just has some decent, good cards to be moving along with. Zalae's hand is a little bit more lackluster, I would say. Obviously, just one good draw off the top to turn this around, like Piloted Shredder, just to guarantee that he can keep up the pressure, because this burst on its own is not going to get the job done. Saiyan is very likely running Feral Rage, I would imagine, for a little bit of armor gain in the late stages. And while there wasn't too much healing in Druid from what I remember, obviously this is pre-Malfurion, pre-Earthen Scales, you still have Moonglade Portal if you wanted to go that direction, and as I mentioned, the Feral Rage most importantly.
Yeah, and look how much Zalae wants to go off with this Violet Teacher. He didn't live in Roots, he didn't Moonfire, he just hero-powered the Scientist, passed. Next turn, probably not next turn, he's probably going to hero power again, but then the turn after, you can Violet Teacher, coin Living Roots, Moonfire if he really wants, and just say, now I have a full board, and you have to work out what to do.
And I think that's exactly what Saiyan is going to be moving towards. And even if that does not work, he can just start ramping up with Nourish, because the bad outcome for him with Teacher is likely just an even board. Because even if Zalae can clear it off with something like a Fireball or a Firelands, he'll probably have to put in a lot of his minions to clear off the 1/1 tokens anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like you're probably going to be ahead in some respect, right? Like, even if it's just a couple of 1/1s. Okay, so Zalae, Saiyan, I think, was just going to do this almost no matter what happens, because he just wanted to get that second hero power in to kill off the Scientist, but he didn't actually go there and left it on 1, huh?
That's a lovely play, I think. Obviously, if it didn't have the Death Rattle, you'd kill it off on this turn. It's not the body you want to leave up or avoid taking the damage, as it were. It's no mirror entity. That's the most important thing here for Saiyan. He knows that if he goes Violet Teacher and his opponent has a Violet Teacher, he cannot kill it off on this turn. So he has to instead rely on killing it off on the following turn, when the mirror entity does hardly a much lower amount of damage.
Yeah, and also as well, he has Swipe for an emergency case that he can always kill it off if it's alive somehow. This is actually, yeah, you're completely right. This is really nice. Because it's not as if you're playing against, say, Zoo, where the Violet Teacher is often a 3/5, full stop, because there's not that many spells in Zoo, right?
Right.
But because he's playing against Tempo Mage, it's like, well, yes, they run spells. Violet Teacher might become a problem.
Exactly.
See, one of my favorite cards from the new set, Wasp Man. Actually, a nice Rush card. I do like it a lot. I still want Rush/Tempo Warrior to become a thing. Can I miss that deck?
Oh, that would be very nice. I have to be honest, I was really hoping we'd see at least one Tempo Warrior here, because I remember there was like a month where you were allowed to play Tempo Warrior with like Varian Rin and Ken thrown in there as well, which was a very juicy deck indeed.
Oh yeah, because Ghoul's in now, right? Deal 1 to the board Ghoul.
And Blood to Ica, which was a sick tempo card.
Oh yeah.
I loved that deck.
I did enjoy that deck quite a lot.
Yes, I too enjoyed that deck.
Mm-hmm. I enjoyed it to the gentlemanly standard of enjoying anything. Can't get too excited.
Yeah, calm down, Derek, you weirdo.
This Wasp is scary now, though. Look at this. Like, the attack now, it's just a 4/2 that Saiyan has to... I mean, Saiyan's not really been too bothered about his health all game. We've seen that, but it's still a 4/2. Like, that's a lot of damage.
That's the thing, and he could have killed it off on this turn, I believe, with the 1/1 and the hero power. But I guess he's afraid of Effigy is the other secret that appears to be knocking about in Zalae's deck, which, is a lot of damage to be taken. You'd rather kind of squishy up the board on this turn, obviously leading into an Azure Drake swipe on the following turn is what he's looking at. But even that has its downsides, because if it's a mirror entity, that's a little bit scarier for the Azure Drake. So a very complex sequence of turns here we've seen from Just Saying. And so far, I think he's piloted it very well.
It'd be perfect if it was entity, right? Because he swipes the Azure Drake.
Wait, the Drake. Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. But yeah, if it's effigy, though, it's kind of weird, right? Because if it's effigy and you kill the wasp, then I'm pretty sure the average 2-drop is worse than a 4-2.
Yes, I agree. So if he didn't have Drake swipe, he would probably have led towards that.
Yeah. But yeah, holding on here is pretty understandable. That's saying there, just a little bit of a wince as it's like, oh,
he's just
not
got
playing minions.
Yeah.
Oh no,
He
the
knows
wasp. After this game, Zalae is going to put in an official complaint about wasp being on the board in a meta that didn't have it. So, can see you now. But here's the big play, right? The innovate even for one, getting the job done with the swipe. Saying loving the clean swipe. Spell damage swipe. Gotta love it.
You do indeed, as Zalae still has a very high amount of damage indeed, as Sixto makes a second appearance here tonight, as he's clearly in Saiyan's hotel room, as they are preparing for Korea HCT Seoul happening this weekend.
Saiyan actually just telling Sixto to leave, as Sixto got wrecked. So Saiyan's like, no, I don't need or want your help. Please go away. It's in a rough spot now, although, as you said, he probably does have Feral Rage. That would be zero surprise whatsoever. He has Raven Idol that can fish for some cards like Ferocious Howl, as an example right now.
Oh yeah, of course. You could. I didn't even think about that. I was thinking about cards that actually fit the rules of this week of History of Hearthstone. But obviously,
you never think about the rules, Derek.
Yeah. We could see an Earthen Scale, something like that. Tree of Life, Poggers.
If only he had one more mana, that would be so funny. And then that secret's that wouldn't work. But it'd be great if like Tree of Life's the next turn Zalae plays a secret and it's counter spell and it counter spells Tree of Life.
I would like to see that muchly.
But now
for saying another board that would love to be met with an Azure Drake swipe, but unfortunately not going to be as effective the second time, as he does not have any more swiperoonies.
Yeah, also this is really sick from Zalae because he's just got enough pressure everywhere that Saiyan is feeling very awkward. This Witch now in UI? Does Saiyan have to take Wild Growth? That would be so funny if that's a rule. You have to pick the one that's most close to the latest expansion. It's like, oh, he's picking UI. Absolutely savage. This makes sense as to why all the Druid players are bringing Raven Idol. It's all coming together right now.
Oh man, that's going to be pretty good if he can survive through till next turn. However, with 6, 7, 8,
so
just enough to stop lethal on this turn.
Okay, incoming justice from Zalae. Incoming Leroy of Violence.
Oh no, or Doomguard. Could it be?
I mean, that'll do. I think Saiyan needs to lose this game because he picked Ultimate Infestation.
What? Because he cheated, as it were.
Yes.
Even though he's perfectly within the rules.
Yep. He cheated my heart. Cheated my heart. That is funny though, isn't it? Emperor into UI, cast on 9.
2 damage off lethal, so even Tundra Rhino would close out the game here.
I actually genuinely think you Violence Portal. You just
I agree.
You just want something big. Mainly because the minion's big, right? You've seen a spell damage swipe. And it should be enough to push him over the edge as well, because if you create the 5-drop, they have to kill the 5-drop, and then if they play another minion, you get that other minion. So then you should have too much for them to deal with.
Right.
Because now UI puts him to 7. That is so
He'd be alive at 1 health.
Oh, there's Arcane Giant.
Oh. And then from that instance, if he goes UI, in terms of 0 mana spells he could get, he's played 1 copy of Moonfire already, 1 copy of Innovate already.
Because Zalae's face is like, Saiyan!
So if it could be... an Innovate off the top would have been so brutally good for Just Saiyan. As Zalae still somehow actually does not have lethal on this turn, and maybe next turn Saiyan can turn the corner. He's 1 health off dying again. But
Feral
Feral
Rage.
Rage in hand. Arcane Giants turn the pressure around. This is a brutally good hand for Saiyan.
There's still Entity, though.
Oh, he's alive. He realizes he's the skin of his teeth. He's hanging on by- What? Oh my god!
Oh, Saiyan's upset, as am I. He would have definitely moonfired Yogged. Go.
100%.
So, do you actually Fandral? Because you know it's Entity, right? Oh, you're almost certain it's Entity. So Fandral gets you all the double buffs regardless. So Feral Rage, Living Roots actually get extra work done.
Yeah. Yeah, he knew that it was not effigy from killing off the minion with
Oh, you can still
UI.
play the giant. Oh my god. This turn. He trades. He can now, with the 4 attack from the Feral Rage, clear off the... Oh my god.
That's
You play giant,
brutally
right?
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought he was like, do I want an 8/8? I
For
wonder.
0 mana. That's not going to do it. That spell cannot go face. As on the following turn, there's going to be, what, 16, 18 damage. Only 8 more damage would be needed, which isn't quite there, even with Azure Drake, Swipe, Moonfire. So from where Just Saying sitting, even if Zalae goes all face, doesn't make any trades, he's still not quite at the point where he can win yet.
So he Arcane Blast the 5/2 and goes face, right? And pings face? I think you have to.
You then set up for Frostbolt lethal. Yeah, I think you kind of have to, don't you?
Yeah, but the Arcane Blast, you've just seen a Flame Waker die. What are you waiting for Arcane Blast? Unless he runs Antonidas, maybe, but that is a 2-turn ask in which you were dead in
you're
2
dead by
turns.
then. Yeah,
so
I agree.
you just Arcane Blast the 5/2 because why not? And then see what you draw.
Innovate not going to be turning things around quite yet. So I imagine for Just Saying, draw is going to be the name of the game at this point.
Yeah, you can start off with Wild Growth. I also wonder if you just actually... so you go 2, 3... I wonder if Azure Drake was actually better.
I mean,
Because
you
your
still
Drake
managed to
swipe.
play the Feral Rage afterwards. But that's a good point. Maybe as Drake swipe.
Because you Azure Drake, you can still
So-
play Feral Rage, Hero Power, or you can swipe Moonfire.
He's never going Drake swipe on this turn, though. He's just drawing as heavily as he can for Feral Rage. Because he can clear off the minions very happily anyway, as you see here.
Dead to Frostbolt.
Dead to pretty much any burn that Zalae can get his hands on. Oh my god, don't do this to me.
Yeah. Oh, Mana Worm. And that is just going to be game.
That was quite something. I mean, I was saying at the start there that for Zalae, his Tempo Mage might be the deck that holds him back. I wasn't expecting it to be in this fashion, as it kind of seems to have fallen short in every aspect. Obviously, it was losing in terms of board control at the start against the Shaman and the Zoo. It could not lock down that early board. But even against a slightly more mid-range control-ish deck, like that Token Druid, it just couldn't get the damage done. It was too much heal and didn't stick a strong enough board to get the game done.
UI had something to do with that, though. Like, that was insane. I mean, there are obviously other cards that would have provided a similar effect, but the kill a minion, create the 5/5, and draw the cards. He drew into Feral Rage quicker. He drew into all the other options faster. Like, that was such a big deal. That was absolutely insane. Very, very close series. Zalae almost got there. Saiyan almost lost it down to his Shaman, to be completely honest.
Right.
And it got a little bit spicy throughout that series, but it was Saiyan who actually won it. I believe we can take a look at the standings in a second, but that series was kind of nutty, actually. I think I need a mate to recover. It's crazy.
that was a truly fantastic series. And I like that we got to see a mix of the real powerhouses from that expansion, obviously with Aggro Shaman thrown in there, And some of the decks that I think maybe didn't get quite as much love as they maybe deserved. That Druid, obviously I was expecting it to just be a Malagos Druid, but the token Druid looking remarkably strong as both of these players now head onto a 2-2 record, as we're getting a pretty good shot now of who is going to be advancing through and who is sadly going to be knocked out.
Yeah, it's all getting pretty close, especially when you look at the bottom. The last match we have coming up for Dane versus Neriah, I believe, just as well, to give you a little bit, to give you a bit of an update. Let's have a quick check. Yeah, we do have Orange and Jackie ready now. So we are going to, as the graphics been currently changed, good job. We are going to be bringing them next. So we did actually miss those. But before we do, let's get a little bit of a chat with the winner of that series. Just Saiyan, of course, did take it over Zalae. So congratulations, Saiyan. I don't know how I feel about that Ultimate Infestation, but I'm sure you feel pretty good about that one.
The Raven Idol gives sometimes it takes away, but that's pretty good there.
Yeah, sometimes it just gets you there. And how were you feeling about the series overall? Because it looked like the Shaman just wasn't going to get the job done for you, and it looked pretty dicey at points. That the kind of cross between the mech and the aggro Shaman.
It wasn't as strong as I thought it would, but I also played like pretty poorly today. Just landed in Korea, and it was my birthday, so came back, wanted to play some Hearthstone.
Oh, happy birthday!
But not really up to my standards, at least.
I wanted to ask you as well. We've seen a surprising amount of diversity at this point. I was expecting just the few strongest decks to completely dominate. Do you think there are any like traps in terms of deck building that people would have gone for that maybe aren't as powerful as people remember?
Oh, yeah. Last week, like I fell into the trap of Patron Warrior. Sixto also fell into the trap of Patron Warrior. I think we might have known, like deep down, that it wasn't good, but we just brought it because gotta pay respects to Patron Warrior. Yeah.
No, that's true. It's a deck I know Sottle was excited about. Sorry, carry on.
This week brought like a dude paladin. Mostly I'm just kind of built on the fly because some of the old god cards are actually very good, like Stand Against Darkness and Steward and things like that. So we figured you could probably do Paladin and play Quartermaster instead. And we never got to play it because I think Zalae actually got that to go.
Okay, well, the quality of the call is kind of dropping a little bit. Obviously, you're in Korea, you need to prep for the tournament, but congratulations, Zalae, Saiyan. We'll let you go. Now the quality of me is dropping quite a lot, but we'll let you go. Congratulations, and good luck for the rest of the matches.
All right, thank you, guys.
Okay, I'll translate what Saiyan actually said towards the end there from Robot's speech to English, maybe. He did actually bring a dude paladin with Stand Against Darkness and some of the other tools that were released in these expansions that we have, League of Explorers, Karazhan, and Old Gods, that kind of he thought would get the work done, but actually didn't end up playing it.
Yeah, I find that kind of surprising because I would imagine that Dude Paladin without Lightfuse, Stegadon, or even Tarim yet, like wouldn't exist. It just feels like those are such core cards in the deck, as well as Level Up that we see in the later expansions. But I suppose you've got some of the old cards in there, like Quartermaster, to buff up the power level a bit.
Yeah, I think Quartermaster, Muster for Battle, cards like those really get the job done, and you can still play some of the AoE buffs. There's still Direwolf, there's still a Raid Leader, for example, if you really want to go crazy. So there are still things that can get the job done there. So it would have been cool to see, but I'm sure we've got plenty more coming up for you guys. I know, as I said, we do have Orange versus Jackie. Orange currently in China, so he's not going to be joining us on the webcam, but you can look at his beautiful face on his picture there, whereas Jackie, another UK boy, going to be getting ready to go into the game. He's bringing Hunter as well. Quite excited for this one.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about what that could be. I mean, it is Jackie, so could it be Camel Hunter that I think was one of the decks that kind of rocketed him to fame, along with Egg Druid, where you played the, what was it, Injured Cavaldir as the 1-mana 2/4?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that gets pulled from the Camel. Jackie did mention last week that, I mean, he did play Egg Druid, so he was like, yeah, I just love playing these cool decks, blah blah blah. So it should be pretty cool if he does play the Camel deck. I remember, I love Hunters, as you probably well know, but I remember trying that deck, and I always just drew Injured Cavaldir and was like, wow, this deck sucks. But I think what I learned was Jackie makes decks work for him, and that's all that matters.
And I think that's one of the coolest things about Jackie as a player, because it's very easy to write him off as a meme player, a meme streamer. But, you know, when he does well in events, like obviously his main one being Game Goon, where he went to a very, very convincing win, and it looked like he just brought a bunch of meme decks, but they were just like highly targeted decks that fit the meta, and they just happened to be kind of cool, interesting decks at the meanwhile. Like when it's the perfect time for his slightly off-meta weird decks to work out. And when he really thinks about what he wants to bring, he's actually a pretty formidable deck builder in a tournament setting.
Yeah, it's one of those scary things that I talk about a lot is that, say for these, you know, DreamHack was just on, right? The Swiss. People prepare a lineup based on what they expect the field to look like.
Yeah.
If you just don't bring what the field should be, so to speak, then no one can prep for you. No one has a particularly great ban strategy prepared for you. And yes, you might not bring the tier 1 decks or even like the sort of counter tier 2 decks, so to speak. But if you bring decks that are good enough, and this is where being a good deck builder comes in, of course, then you can just almost just cheat out the expected meta of the tournament, because no one can be prepared for something that no one's seen before. And we are ready to go into game number 1 now. We'll see what Jackie does bring to the table. I will. Oh, wait. Is this Murloc Paladin?
It's either
probably not right.
I mean, it's maybe what anything can happen Murloc Paladin, or it's Control Paladin, because this is obviously the era of N'Zoth Paladin, which was knocking around for a while. I'm trying to think if just Control N'Zoth Paladin played Loot Hoarders, though, because from what I can remember, I think it might have just been the Anything variant that did that, and it would be very Jackie to play Anything Paladin as well.
Anything Paladin was sick.
It was such a sick deck.
Right before they rotated Murkai, when it was like really stupid, was like, I play Anything Can Happen. Anything can't happen. The only thing that happens is you die. Every single time. It was so cool. But yeah, there was some N'Zoth Paladin. For example, Evangelion actually just demolished DreamHack Valencia with N'Zoth Paladin.
Right.
At one point, he just didn't lose. It was insane. Very similar to Ike's performance recently at DreamHack this past year or so, being pretty unbeaten in that. So yeah, we'll see. But I will agree. I don't remember the Loot Hoarders, but maybe this is new tech.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, Loot Hoarder has been in and out of Paladin for the longest time because it's always had some kind of synergy, be it through Call to Arms, obviously more recently, before the nerf, or even just N'Zoth, as we mentioned, because there were, I believe, towards the end, a couple of variants that ran N'Zoth as well as Anything Can Happen, if I'm remembering correctly, although that obviously was the less popular variant. Oh, there we go.
There feels good, man.
That feels amazing, man.
Now, bear in mind, War Leader is nerfed, so there won't be the health buff on the War Leaders anymore, but you didn't really need it in this deck. You're not playing normal Murloc Paladin where you want to snowball. You just play the Murlocs, throw them on the board, hope they die, and then press one button and you win the game.
As obviously we have been focusing very heavily on Jackie's deck list as it's the more new and interesting one that we've seen. Orange appears to be playing pretty standard Freeze Mage, just looking to get the draw going early on, as he's done pretty well. He's had Acolyte of Pain, he's got Blood Mage Thalnos knocking about in hand as well, and that Emperor Thaurissan is looking pretty juicy as well. If he could find the Evolved Kobold that I imagine is in there, or the Ice Lancers as well, this could be looking pretty scary for Jackie.
Yeah, one thing where in this matchup you have to prepare for is how you beat the ice block, right? Because in this specific matchup you can't anything and guarantee win because of the damage, because of ice block. So you need to say, so if I anything and ice block, what's his follow-up? Probably freeze the board. Then what's my follow-up? But cards like True Silver Champion, Consecration in hand for Jackie means that he can do the damage from hand that is required.
Right. And so if this is the variant with Murkai in there as well, which is in Wild, I believe, because it's just been rotated through to the kind of Hall of Fame, if I'm correct in saying that. I believe that the full combo, if all 5 of your Murlocs die in double War Leader, double Bluegill, and Murkai, that's 22 damage. if I'm calculating correctly. So Jackie does kind of have to get his opponent to that threshold, because popping the ice block with the first anything can happen is of the utmost importance. If he spends a whole turn not popping an ice block and probably not removing all too much or healing up, that's just Orange's turn to just kill his opponent. So that's going to be pretty important for Jackie to get in some early damage, which he's doing a pretty good job of. He's got the War Leader on board. Now, true Silver Champions should be able to pretty handily get his opponent down to a threshold where anything will close out the game.
Yeah, the weird thing here is, because Mage can actually go relatively quick, Jackie's not got all the time in the world right now.
That's very true.
This deck, the Anything Paladin, often runs Equality Clank. True Silvers, that is to slow the game down, to deal with boards and stuff.
Yes.
But Mage doesn't really have that, right? It doesn't actually need to deal, doesn't need to have minions on the board really to actually win the game. It's all spell based. So it's kind of weird. Jackie does have to speed this up a little bit. Solemn Vigil is going to be really nice, even if he has to hard cast it just to draw 2 cards. But really, he'll probably want to just Whirlwind Slam this Ragnaros Lightlord next turn, just to get some damage and pressure on.
That's a really interesting point, because okay, so there's 2 main ways of play that Jackie can go for this. He can go for, after an Alex Straza or a bunch of burst spells come down, he can have the True Silver pre-equipped and then go Ragnaros into True Silver and heal for 10 on a single turn, which is a huge swing in his favor against a Freeze Mage and will probably protect him for a turn. But as you say, just getting the damage on board, trying to not win through the burst combo, is definitely something that's worth considering. I don't think he will go for it here.
I think he almost has to, because how does Freeze Mage beat an 8/8, right? Do you remember normal Ragnaros? It's a problem. Yeah. Fireball, Frostbolt, or spell damage, Fireball, Ping, whatever, right? 1, that's a lot of damage, but 2, is 10 healing after they Alex you really enough? Because normally if they Alex you, you are extremely dead the turn after.
Extremely so.
So Evolved Kobold, Emperor, Burn with torches. Is 10 health, even if you set it up perfectly, even enough? Like, that's my question.
That's a fair point. But then again, so if you heal up for 10, you're at 25. I suppose the difference between 25 and 30 is actually pretty big.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, would they even have to bother Alexing you? But yeah, I suppose killing your opponent from 25 is a lot easier than from 30.
And look at this with Valet as well for 3 damage. Like, I don't know. I wanted an 8/8 on the board if I was Jackie. It's like, what does Orange do to this? To an 8/8, right? He has to Roaring Torch or probably Fireball, actually. Fireball, Valet, yeah? And that's his whole... Ping. That's his whole turn, and he's just used 9 damage to kill it off. That's a big deal. That's 9 power, like 9 damage gone.
Okay, but then on the flip side, so you said that the 8 or 10 healing that you get on a turn from Rag Lightlord doesn't really matter. So then from Orange, maybe he doesn't have to kill it. He can just freeze it every turn, because outside of the Rag Lightlord, there's really not that many threats in the deck. So he can quite happily just go Blizzard or Frost Nova to try and stall it every turn. And then just go for Alex Straza into kill your opponent on a following turn. Like, he doesn't necessarily have to even deal with the 8/8 body. It's a super interesting point, though.
Yeah, because then again, if he freezes it, then it's healing every turn. So the Alex gets you get the heal from the post Alex anyway. And also, if the freezes are used, then there's no freeze for the post anything can happen turn to freeze the Murlocs out. Circles. Let's run in them. It's a cool matchup, though. I think that's the main point we're both getting at. It's a very cool matchup.
And that's what I loved so much about Anything Can Happen. It was such a flexible deck, because Anything almost wasn't the main win condition of the deck in a lot of matchups. Like against aggro, you just removed until you played Rag Lightlord. And then against the slightly slower decks, you obviously had to go for a full Anything Can Happen. But even then, you've still got Rag Lightlord or maybe Tyrion if that's in the deck list as well.
Yeah, it's really tough to judge. It looks like the Alex is just going to be slammed on 9 for Orange.
It does indeed. And Jackie,
just for some pressure, though? Because he's not planning on killing him, because you just play Emperor first, right?
Well, I mean, look at his hand. Like, he can go Blood Mage, Fireball, Roaring... he's got a coin, so... Yeah, Blood Mage, Frostbolt, Roaring Torch, Fireball is a huge amount of damage.
18, right?
Yes, yeah.
So if Jackie
it has to be Lightlord.
heal with Light Lord, he's dead.
Yes.
The good thing is he can 100% heal with Light Lord.
He can
There was
indeed.
no ping on the Acolyte, for example.
I think this was a good play from Orange because it has to be, I mean, like we said, it has to be Light Lord. It also has to be a kill on the Alex Straza because if Alex connects to face, you win anyway. So it has to be exactly second copy of Equality into Rag Light Lord, which is obviously very unlikely to happen. And Orange is clearly unfazed about it, as we can see from his player cam. But he's going to have to
Just happy.
back up.
Yeah, this is exactly the exact turn, and also what you mentioned a lot earlier, whereas you have the True Silver equipped for the +2 on demand.
Yeah.
So going up to 25 though, but there's still a lot of damage, and I think it's a tough one, right? Can Orange just play Emperor right now? Emperor Loot Hoarder.
He doesn't have a Frostbolt or an Evolved Kobold. Like
He has a Frostbolt.
Oh, sorry, an Iceland. Sorry, an Iceland.
That's true, but he's also reduced all the other burn by 1, which effectively negates the Icelands not being 0, right?
A fair point.
Not
He just
perfectly,
needs to
because
think-
0 mana is obviously infinitely better than 1 cost, but yeah.
Yeah. He just needs to think at this point, like, if he's going for the full burst plan, how does he achieve that? Like, if he reduces this hand, can he ever deal 30 in a single turn?
Yeah, he might just have to go for the freeze, to be honest.
Yeah.
Just to freeze it out and go for Loot Hoarder just to get those draws. He could even just Loot Hoarder ping this turn. So he completely, start the turn off that way. He is going to change gears, though. He is going to just kill off the Ragnaros, get the Valet on the board, and now the question becomes, is there, just a Lay on Hands in this deck? Because this is one of the decks where Lay on Hands did make a bit of a comeback because it drew cards.
That's
But
true.
with double Solemn Vigil.
Yeah, there probably actually is Lay on Hands in this deck. I didn't even think about that.
But I will say with double Solemn Vigil, the Loot Hoarders and the Acolyte, maybe there's not. Because normally I think you drop the Solemn Vigil for Lay on Hands, or at least drop one of them.
I don't know. There was a huge amount of draw in this deck. Like, it was played as a big old combo deck, basically.
I mean, at this moment, Jackie's can just play anything and say Orange, right? Now you have to freeze the board every single turn.
But for Orange, on the other side, while he may not have been able to deliver 30 damage in a turn through one Emperor proc, if he just goes for Emperor into freeze on this turn, there's no guarantee, or it's actually fairly unlikely that his opponent will be able to clear off the Emperor Thor's hand. It would have to be anything can happen, which would clear off most of his own board anyway.
This. I'm working out whether ping is ever enough.
Oh man, it's so complicated because then I'm thinking, okay, but in this scenario,
Ping coin freeze.
So he's going super all in on keeping the Emperor alive. I was thinking in this scenario, True Silver can then kill off your Emperor, but then they're taking 4 damage from the True Silver, which is a pretty good outcome for you. But in this instance, it's all in on keeping this Emperor alive, and it would have to be Consecration into True Silver, or anything can happen to kill it off.
He can't even prot the block with the anything. As I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's only Murkai and one War Leader. So now, again, Jackie's still asking the question, you have to now freeze or kill everything every turn. And this is the weird part now. There are 2 Murkais in the pool for the second anything can happen. So guess what? That block's getting prot next turn if Jackie wants it to.
And a Doomsayer is being killed off because if you ping the Bluegill, it will just come back with an anything can happen. But obviously, Orange kind of has to live in a world where anything can happen is not in his opponent's hand, because that's just a little bit too much pressure in this scenario.
What this does is the Doomsayer is actually fine if he freezes, right? Because I'm gonna go because the Murkai was still hit for hard enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the 2 Murkais still kill the Doomsayer and proc the block.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do.
7.
If they have anything, there's no way you can stop them from killing the Doomsayer and proccing the block.
Yeah, because of specifically Murkai being the kill.
Yes. And yeah, it just has to be anything here. Like it's so good. You've seen a bunch of freezes now.
Feel those Murkeyes as they punch you in the face for 1 million.
This is what Hearthstone was all about.
Murlocs.
Murlocs.
Heroes of Murloc.
As that is such a high amount of damage that can come through now. 6, 12, 15, 18 plus 4 spell damage. 22?
22, yeah.
Can you even fit in a ping?
Yep. 23.
So
now, Orange can actually just win.
Yeah, you just go for the Ice Lance for lethal.
So, but you do want to play Thanos this turn, right?
Okay,
You want 2 draws next turn.
Yeah, you do.
So you Thanos, cast as much as you can, leave 1 Frostbolt out.
But do you cast as much as you can? Like, you need to think about the top deck of Evolved Kobold. Like,
yeah, I think you do, right?
Yeah, okay.
Because you want the damage from Thanos right now. Because if you don't, Thanos dies, and then you lose like what 3-4 damage. From all the spells? This is perfect. This is perfect.
Because this way, if you get Ice Lance, it's lethal. If you get Evolved Kobold, it's lethal. However, if they have True Silver Champion, as long as Jackie sequences this correctly and attacks into the hero before proccing the block, so he doesn't have to take any damage, which he does very nicely indeed, it means that now Ice Lance on its own as a top deck will not deliver lethal.
Does have 2 draws though.
He does have 2 draws.
I think both torches are gone, so there's a lot of damage being used this game.
1 fireball has been gone. Like, there's very few top decks that can do it.
But wait, what if Orange just gets more time because of Blizzard Frostbolt Phase? Oh, Bluegill! Oh, look at that turn as well. Intellect. There's the 1 Ice Lance. Oh, he can cast another Intellect for another Ice Lance. He knows Blizzard's not going to be enough.
Yeah.
Well, what's weird is he either Intellects now for the win, or Blizzard and Frostbolt to try and win the turn after. He's intellecting now.
He smells it. He knows it's there.
There's the ice. Oh my! What a get! Can we please have these decks back, Derek? Can you put an official request into someone? Because what a game! Absolutely huge. Both Ice Lances come in. Orange wins it. He went for the win this turn because he probably just wasn't confident. And you know what I'll say, actually, Derek, looking at the deck sizes, Jackie must have what, 4, 5 cards left or something? Yeah. So knowing that there's 1 Bluegill, there's 1 War Leader, there's very limited amount of cards left in the deck, Orange probably thought it's actually pretty likely he gets this. So I'm just going to go for it. And going for it, got him there. What a game. Orange takes it 1-0 so far over Jackie.
And getting a pretty good look, actually, at some of the less explored cards in terms of the League of Explorers, with Forgotten Torch there really coming into its own in terms of its power level. I believe Keeper of Uldaman may be played in that Paladin deck. Maybe not in the Murloc Paladin, because you need so much draw in there in order to make the deck function. But it was a very powerful Paladin card in its own right.
Yeah, I kind of really enjoy watching the evolution of sort of powerful decks. Is that, for example, it was used in Murloc Paladin early on as a control tool to just stop getting beat up by giants, for example, from Warlock,
right?
Or any of the big demons. But then, as we quite rightly saw, Murloc Paladin became draw your deck and play Murlocs, and then you win. So it's kind of cool just seeing the decks evolve and change over time, and it's something that is going to always interest me about the game. Look at Token Druid, right? We see a lot of Token Druid at DreamHack, and there was a lot of weird plays involved around not playing because you don't want to play into things like Plague, right? Yeah. What if you just had a Cairn or a Lich King in your Token Druid? You just drop that on its own. Do you just win? I don't know, but it's probably pretty good. And the evolution of decks going on as they become more popular and more powerful is actually super interesting. It's cool. We get to see a bit of a flashback on some of the most powerful versions of the most powerful decks at the time.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. And like that, it's an interesting showcase of the anything can happen Paladin, because even when it got all the Murlocs at the start pretty much, and it got 2 copies of anything can happen, it still wasn't quick enough. It still just was a relatively slow burst lethal, whereas the Freeze Mage just seems to consistently deliver a higher amount of damage, as we are finally getting a look at Jackie's Hunter. It doesn't appear to be the injured Kvaldir version from what I'm seeing, and instead looks to just be a full-on secret trap hunter.
Yeah, and this is where we merge the timelines basically to create this alternate universe, because Mad Scientist plus Cloaked Huntress,
yeah,
plus Shredder,
this never existed.
This is a powerful secret hunter deck. This is going to be absurd if Jackie can get it going. And this is the thing, right? Look at the how much extra stuff Jackie just has. Oh, if I get Mad Scientist, it pulls the secrets. Sick. If not, and I draw the secrets, well, I have Cloaked Huntress to play them for free anyway. So it's just the redundancy in the deck now probably makes this version extremely strong. Whereas Orange, I'm not quite sure what the deck is quite yet. I think we catch the mulligan, to be honest. But Sludge Belchers, and then, you know, Keeper the Grove, not Keeper the Grove, sorry. Mana Dude. Maya Keeper, that's the one. Thank you, Derek.
Mana Dude.
Mana Dude. It is going to be off to a pretty good start, being able to just get these Sludge Belchers down quick. It's Giants Druid. Yeah. Just
good cards with spells Druid. I mean, this is why this Druid of any kind at this point in Hearthstone was really one of my favorite styles of decks to play, because just having the early game of Innovate, Living Roots, Wild Growth, the Feral Wrath you had thrown in there as well. With the Maya Keeper, you had so much ramp, you had so much early board control. It was just a delight to play, as Orange clearly indicating how he views this matchup, going Coin Wild Growth into Innovate Maya Keeper, going for as fast of a start as he can clearly go for, because he anticipates this to be a very aggressive deck.
Yeah, and look at this now. Shredder, and because that Huntress, there's this Snakes as well. And Jackie now didn't attack. So is he just baiting Freezing Trap here? Like, he could have attacked quite nicely into the Sludge Belcher and left the 1-2er. And what's kind of weird is he played the Shredder into the minion that beat Shredder in the form of the Sludge Belcher.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Like, he could have just attacked, got a good trade. But now he's doing this attack this turn. What he did was buy some time, because Orange didn't want to attack into another Freezing Trap, even though it's Snakes that we know. But kind of weird there. I feel like he could have just attacked in.
I think he knew that his opponent was never going to attack with the Sludge Belcher there. Like, Orange can't take the risk of it being a Freezing Trap there. And the 3 damage to face isn't really that relevant. And he's thinking an extra 1-2 on his opponent's board on that turn was actually super relevant, because there would have been it would have been able to kill off the Cloaked Huntress. But because now he's got the Shredder to kill off the 1-2 as well, it means that this Cloaked Huntress lives around as a 3-1 rather than just being killed off the board, which makes a big difference.
My question is, though, is the 3-1 Cloaked Huntress that much of a big deal versus 3-1-1 Snakes? Because that's what he would have had if the attack went in from the 1-2 Sludge.
That's a good point.
I don't know. I feel
Maybe
like
he can have both. He can have his cake and eat it.
I mean, eating cake's pretty cool.
I do like eating cake.
I like eating cake too much, which is a problem, but we'll get to that in a different point. And another fantastic 2-drop from the Shredder. Nice, just big taunt minion. Oh, big for a 2-drop. Taunt minion you've got there. And now, just one of the steadiest, best cards in the game since the beginning. Good old Savannah Hyman.
Yeah, the OG, kind of mostly being phased out because it's not. I don't know. It's weird. Why? I mean, I guess it's not being played because you're just playing secret versions, the spell versions, or Big Hunter at the moment. There's no real kind of mid-rangey one, and you just want to kill your opponent. And like, after you played Spellstone, you want to go double kill command. You don't want to go Savannah Hyman. But it is interesting that, given that we are at a lower power level at this point than we were back then, High Main still saw play back then, but not now.
It depends on who you ask, Mr. Derek.
Is that true?
I know Orange recently played at the Gold Series in China. He is currently in China, I think, or he's traveling to Korea now. I'm not sure where he is. But he played in the Gold Series, and I think he got top 4 last time I looked, which is
he got
huge.
second.
Oh, is it second he finished?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I saw his top 4 tweet, but he took Hybrid Hunter, which is Hybrid Hunter Evolved, but with some new cards. With some spellstones, but which had high mains, and also I believe Sixto, Surrender, and Eloise are bringing Cube Hunter to HCT Korea, which is actually not the Recruit Hunter a lot of people are playing, but actually Cubes, and that plays
really?
high mains as oh, the deck's sweet. I'll show you after this.
You'll have to show it to me.
The deck's sweet.
That sounds very cool.
But the second you say Surrender, Sixto, and Eloisa bringing a deck to a tournament,
You know it's cool.
it's probably okay. You know, it's
Yeah.
probably a decent deck. Let's catch up. And Jackie doing the thing Hunter does best is the second you're ahead in pressure, you apply more pressure to almost an insurmountable degree.
As Orange is absolutely going to have to lock down this board right now if he wants to have a chance, because Jackie obviously has huge amounts of damage on board, and with Quick Shot in hand, able to draw an extra card on the following turn, likely will just be pushing forward huge amounts of damage from hand as well. And I mean, for Orange, Healing Touch is okay because it gets him out of that threshold if he can clear off the board. But he's going to have to get some truly devastatingly powerful boom bots if he wants to wrestle this board back.
Yeah, look how just brutal just the accessibility of activating traps is in this deck, right? It's just trap after trap after trap. And Jackie's not even had to hardcast a single trap this game. He's hardcast, but only when they've been 0 mana.
Oh, you're right.
So it's like, oh no, I'll cast my 0 mana 4/2 stealth minion. And look, like he's just ahead. Jackie's just still ahead right now. Yes, there's a giant on the board, which is nice. But does it really matter that much? Like I said, the quick shot's a really big deal with the draw. He's got ultimate damage from the bow. I'm pretty sure he can actually just leave this giant up.
I mean, this does just perfectly speak to what Hearthstone was. Maybe not necessarily at this point, because obviously when Karazhan and Whispers were in, GVG and Naxxramas was out, but you just didn't clear boards. You could have all the removal you wanted, and boards would just stick around forever. And I guess the kind of closest we have to that at this point is Token Druid with Soul of the Forest, which can be very annoying to clear up those death rattles. But here with Creeper, Piloted Shredder, Savannah Highmane, everything was a death rattle that spawned another minion.
Or Taunt Druid, where you just can't clear the board, so it always sticks around.
Sure.
Handmaster, really good draw as well, because so many beasts on the board that it's going to be unlikely that Orange clears everything, because the 2 health on like 3 of the beasts is quite tough to deal with. See Raven Idol number 2.
Ugh.
Poison Seeds, let's go.
Buff up half my opponent's minions. Love it.
I mean, I'm pretty sure he's dead either way.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing going to be getting the jobs on here for Orange. Has to just give it a draw with Nourish, but I don't think there's anything left in his deck that will be keeping him alive. So Jackie equalizing the score here. His Hunter deck looking super powerful here.
Yeah, I mean, when you can play so many secret activating cards together in a fairly aggressive deck anyway, and when the secrets are, for example, Catrick currently not in standard, so that's just powerful in itself. But the freezing trap early on was really nice. I think the not trading the earlier point versus the first Belcher was a little bit weird, but wasn't really enough to give him any form of serious punish, because the Sludge Belchers just were never keeping up with things like on curve Highmane, the Shredder that we saw as well. But that Hunter deck is scary, and that game, even though the deck was more powerful than it sort of should have been in the past, kind of shows what Hunter pretty much was for the longest time, right? It was just play stuff and get him. And that's what it did, and what it did very well. But serious, all evened up. Paladin and Mage on Jackie's side. That Murloc Paladin, and Orange with the Druid, which is the Giants, and a Mystery Warlock.
And I think that game, just to add on to what you were saying about the Hunter, was a perfect showcase of what gives Jackie an advantage, or plays to his strengths in this series of competitions. Is, you know, once again, this is a meta that did not exist in standard Hearthstone. So for players like Jackie and Dane, who play a lot more wild, I think a lot more creatively, I think some would say about the game, because they play cards that most people wouldn't even consider going for, you end up with strategies that maybe end up just being more powerful. Because there for Orange, he was obviously playing around with Naxxramas by putting just Sludge Belcher in an already good deck. But Jackie's deck felt like it really maximized the benefit of having GVG GVG and Naxxramas knocking about in these expansions as well.
It really did, yeah. And now we've got game number 3.
We do.
Orange with the Rena Warlock, and Jackie back on this Murloc Paladin. I think, to be honest, Jackie's got the advantage here.
I think I would probably agree with you there. There's for Orange, like, you know, we saw from Sixto, if you want to play it in that way, you can curve very aggressively with this deck. Like, even just as we see now, Sun Fury into Imp Gang Boss into something, into Coin Emperor, maybe even into Reno, God forbid, just for the body to try and push forward as much damage as possible and close out the game with Leroy and PO.
There is one thing to think about, that if Orange is playing, you know, the Faceless Leroy PO 20 damage thing, combo, excuse me, sorry, then Orange can, there's no, Jackie doesn't really have game versus that outside of Tyrion, as he's not really got taunts, right? So he could just go for just general pressure and then just tap, as we saw him on turn 2, just keep tapping early to try and get to that point where he can actually just go all in with that combo and kill Jackie before Jackie can even really get to a safe point, because Jackie, I feel, has to do more to get to his combo in terms of playing all these Murlocs.
I would definitely agree with you, but this is kind of one of the other benefits of Murloc Paladin is, you know, we do have to clarify that it is a anything can happen variant as opposed to the more modern builds of Murloc Paladin. But it's still a Paladin that plays Murlocs. You can still just curve out and get a very aggressive kind of mid-game. And Reno Lock generally will have the answers with the likes of Hellfire, maybe an Abyssal Enforcer knocking about there as well. Oh no, that's Mean Streets of Gadget Stands.
That's Mean Streets. Yeah, let's not go crazy, Derek. That's next week.
You got Demon Wrath, I suppose, as the old school kind of board clear. So they're usually going to have the answers. But both decks here can put forward a very aggressive mid-game.
Really can. And there's Leroy. Belchazar also a big deal versus the Murlocs, as it's just multiple trades. There's PO as well. So now at least Orange can say, right, Emperor next turn.
Yeah.
Done. Leroy 4, PO 0. Then push and just push as much as possible and probably aggressively tap for Faceless.
Man, this does just work out so gorgeously for Orange. If he can get this Doomsayer to go off, he has a clear board for Emperor. The Emperor will very possibly get 2 ticks on the following turn. Leroy will be fully discounted along with the power overwhelming. Like you said, you can just tap for Faceless and start moving towards a pretty good chance of lethal in the next few turns.
Yeah, and also to really, after Emperor, you can just play
stuff.
Reno as a dude. You know, like, because your health doesn't really matter. If you go 17 to 30, health is like fine. Now there's
good enough,
giant next turn. You just want something to do some chip damage at this point.
That's going to be so good, because obviously you do want to be afraid of equality into some kind of a board clear, but I think there's a decent chance that your opponent doesn't have equality. You can make the read because you just played Doomsayer. They know you're going into an Emperor turn, so they would pretty aggressively move to clear off that copy of Doomsayer, I would say, just to try and make sure that they're still ahead at all times on board.
Wow, Aldor into Doomsayer.
That feels
That's
pretty
a second Emperor tick.
Oh. Feels amazing, man.
Doesn't have silence. 5. Okay, Giant into the Siphon Soul on the Doomsayer.
Okay, so I'm not suggesting he does do this, but he could go for Faceless onto his Emperor Thaurissan to get the most disgustingly cheap hand ever. I think it's more just I want
and
to
then
see
lose
that,
his damage combo.
Good. Yeah.
He's like, he could make that play. You are correct, Derek. That is cards he could click and it would do that effect. Or he could try and win the game.
All right, wait. Okay, you can get off your high horse, because I think I've lost count of the times in HCT you've gone, okay, Stottle. So hear me out. I'm not saying he should make this play, but I do want to see him make this play.
Right, and now the coin is on the other side, and I get to mess around with you. Like, if anything, we're playing the roles absolutely perfectly. Oh wow, Barnes in this deck.
Ooh.
Huh.
Looking for, I guess, just more Murlocs.
And Murloc, yeah.
Yeah.
Priority of, like, actually any of them are fine, right?
Yeah, they're all good.
Old Murkai being the best, of course.
Or Loot Hoarder, another synergy in the deck.
I don't think synergy matters that much when you're just dead.
I will agree with that. Is he actually just dead here?
Yeah, because that 1 damage from the Emperor puts him to 28.
Okay, I'm a little bit more
dunked.
convinced.
Oh god, I miss this deck so much. Bring back PO and Emperor. Why not?
Free PO. Oh man. Okay, so I was gonna say I'm a little bit more convinced by Reno Lock now. I mean, this was a 2-tick Emperor game. You don't lose 2-tick Emperor games. That's like the point of Emperor Thaurissan. Is if it ticks twice in any kind of a mildly combo deck, you just win those games. But very nicely done there by Orange. I think the perfect setup for Emperor Thaurissan, as well as just playing aggressively for board, making sure he didn't focus too hard on trying to get the Mountain Giant on board early on, or going for the full combo. It just happened to end up in his hand while he was playing aggressively for board.
That's it. I think, yes, he drew Leroy into PO into Faceless with Emperor, right? Like, yeah, those are games you definitely win on average, but the deck did that fairly consistently whilst having game versus early aggressive decks, right? That's why you play Reno, for example. You know, you have that early anti-aggro start to be able to defend off, and that's why the deck was so popular for actually so long. Like, people playing Reno Lock pretty much since Reno was in to when Reno went out. Like, people just playing that deck for so long. But Jackie now falling 1 and 2 behind, still has a chance to stay in the series and get some wins with this Mage and Paladin. But is the Murloc Paladin just not good enough anymore? I don't think the deck really suffered that much from the War Leader nerf, but maybe the deck just isn't good enough compared to everything else right now.
Yeah, it feels like a bit of an outlier because, I mean, even at its prime, it was never that strong. Like, I don't think you could ever have called it a tier 1 tournament deck because Paladin just wasn't really that good at that point. It was obviously before the Murloc stuff, before Call to Arms, but after Minibot and Shredder had rotated out. And for Jackie, you know, this is maybe him suffering from wanting to put on a good show, which, you know, he's doing. We love to see this deck. Rather than going for the absolute optimal deck to play, because I think if he did want to bring the best Paladin deck, it would be some kind of a secret or mid-range Paladin.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much like me casting, to be honest. I suffer to put on a good show too in form of casting with Sol, so that all makes absolute sense to me. But I will say, maybe not tier 1, but I think with Old Murkai, it was either tier 1 or the highest tier 2 deck.
That's fair.
Because Old Murkai, you just won games. Like, it was absolutely absurd. But after it was Old Murkai was rotated out, and you like needed the blue girl stuff to happen. You know, you need like multiple blue girls with war leaders. That got a little bit harder, 100%. But Orange only needs to take a win with this Druid, and he's off to a reasonable start at least. He does have the gadgets and has the Raven Eye and the cheap spells. He just needs the time to get there at this point.
Yeah, he's just wondering if it's worth, you know, going for draw here. His hand is not that bad. Like, he doesn't really have to get the draw going super quickly. Obviously, he's looking for cards like Asda Drake to play in the near future, maybe an Emperor Thaurissan as well to really make this Auctioneer pop. But he can just take it nice and slow for the moment, saving a Wrath for a crucial War Leader, like we see here, to deny a big board being made with the Old Murkai itself. Could be really good.
Yeah, look at this now with the Nourish.
Oh, yes.
That is really good. You get the benefit of Nourish, you get the crystals for the gadgets and Auctioneer next turn, and you can just wrath away this War Leader. But now we have to do the Murloc math. There's a War Leader and a blue girl, right?
Okay, one of each, blue and green.
Easy. And now, hello, gadgets and Auctioneer, and the filth that is Raven Idol feels like it draws you 2 cards.
And even just directly into a True Silver here, I think Orange correctly realizes it's never going to be, you know, this Auctioneer is never going to live. It's always going to die the turn after it's played. So he just needs to give himself the best possible one.
He could Lotus and put his Auctioneer to 5.
Oh, he's going for Evolving Spores instead. Is this the token variant he's playing? Because if he's playing
well, it runs Giants anyway, right?
Yes, I mean, I think the Malagos version ran Giants.
Oh, that's
as
true.
Well, though.
Tree of Life. Jade! Oh my god, you can cheat out Jade Druid.
Okay.
Innovate Jade Shuffle, let's go!
I do want to point out, Jade Idol is banned within the History of Hearthstone format. I assume that only applies to putting it in your deck, but that would be like super cheating. And that's all I'm saying.
Oh, yep, that's Malagos. Okay.
So he chose Evolving Spores over Mark of the Lotus, even though he's not playing a token version? I'm pretty surprised by that.
I mean, Mark of the Lotus would be just as good if it was in token anyway, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Even better point.
I honestly would have made that gadget Zan a 5/5 and said, now what? You need what? Bluegill, Pyro, and a spell plus the weapon swing to kill it. You know, like you still ask for that 1 damage is such a large amount from Paladin.
I actually agree with you. And I before you point out how surprised I sound, I did not sound surprised.
That was just me pressing the button anyway. So. I had the dark button ready to go. Like, I actually agree with you.
I actually agree.
It works.
I mean, I guess even then, like, if he sticks a reasonably big board with like Dr. Boom, or is he trying to go for Emperor into stealth?
That's
disgusting.
That's awfully fancy, Derek. That's
fancy.
maybe too fancy for me. Maybe you Southerners like that fancy stuff, but not up north.
Up in Manchester, we just jam Mark of the Lotus on an auctioneer.
Oh, 100%. You draw a card and make it not die to true silver. That is a sick play. Back there going for maximum card draw. I don't know why I say it like that. I've got nothing.
You're trying to fancy yourself up a bit.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to sound Southern. Because that's what
Maximum.
Southern people sound like. Say garage, Derek.
Garage.
Do you actually say garage?
No, I say
garage.
I deliberately avoid saying it because I sound weird when I say it. I say the car's house.
The car, because that doesn't sound weird.
That doesn't sound weird. I never get weird looks when I say that.
Are we going checking the car's house?
The car's
that thing?
house.
You're like,
sorry, what? You mean the garage?
No, I mean the garage.
I think I would actually say garage. Garage sounds weird.
Well, that's why I presumed you'd say that.
Yeah. I don't know what I am anymore.
I know Sol says grass.
Grass. I do say grass. I don't say grass.
Grass, man. Anyway, Dr. Boom. He's a card. Do you like my high level switch?
Cutting edge commentary there. Some cutting commentary from Raven.
We just linked that together.
A decent card.
The funny thing here is the old, like, you know, even if Pyro into equality clears, this is one of the weird issues of Boom interactions is that the bots still do the damage to the face, right?
And it's
and
one
then suddenly
card.
Malygos dead. It's like...
Like, can you ever really afford to just go for Pyro Equality or Equality Consecrate on 1 minion? Like, the Druid is not completely void of threats. This deck does not entirely rely on Emperor Thaurissan into Malygos to win the game, even though that's what Orange has in hand. He's still got a pretty decent hand outside of that in the deck in terms of Arcane Giants and stuff like that.
Yeah. It was actually just such a well-rounded deck. I think for another good example is, do you remember like Malygos Warlock with the dragons?
Oh yeah.
Like that had Malygos, but it was also just a well-rounded good deck. You know, the cards didn't all revolve around Malygos. Oh my god, evolving spells on Boombots. Oh, the Boombots always do 4, Derek. The Boombots always do 4.
So obviously, sadly, there was no stealth being gained there. But I suppose Orange wouldn't even have taken it, because in this instance, he's now got a truly absurd amount of damage that
Jackie's just dead.
He's just dead. Like, there's nothing he can do.
He's just deaded.
He's so deaded. Like, this isn't even close. He's staggeringly deaded.
Wow. I would have loved. The only thing I think Orange has done wrong here is he didn't do the 360 no scope Moonfire on his own Boombot after that buff, just because he knew he had the damage anyway. Like Malygos double living roots.
Just as like the flourish on his truly disgusting lethal.
With that Boombot hit 4th to face twice. Jackie, thumbs up. He knows he's pretty deaded. And Orange takes the series 3-1, and that game was brutal.
It was indeed. This warms my heart, because obviously last week Sottle had to sit through Patron Warrior being complete and utter trash. But as Karazhan era Malygos Druid is my favorite deck of all time, it makes me very proud indeed to see it doing very well so far this tournament.
And it's also just a cool deck because, as we said,
so cool.
I think the biggest thing for me in how much I like it is options, right? The deck can do all sorts of things. It doesn't always just Malygos you in the face, but when it does, it's pretty fun too. We'll just. I think I'll just get a check as well. I'm not 100% sure if we're having an interview with Orange,
Right?
Because we obviously didn't have cameras, so we're not gonna have an interview. He's currently traveling or not at a place where his camera or interview issues are going to work out. So unfortunately, we don't get to hear from Orange, but I'm sure he's pretty happy. His second place in Gold Series can only be eclipsed by winning his match versus Jackie in History of Hearthstone this week. So it's the only way Orange could possibly be happier. So he's a very happy piece of fruit right now. We do have, to be completely honest, especially from what I've seen from chat, one of the highlight matches of this week, I would say, is Neriah 3-0 versus Dane. The sort of, he's a content creator, revolves a lot around Wild and just doing wacky stuff. Someone probably good friends with Jackie. This is the match. So both players are 3-0. After this match, someone's going to be 4-0, and they're going to be on their own at that score. So it's going to be looking pretty good for all these players, and I'm excited for this one.
And
what about you, Derek?
I agree. I'm very, very excited for this match because I feel like it's such a perfect example of two major facets of Hearthstone. Because Neriah, we know him to be a very good, strong, just technical player of Hearthstone. He just gets decks very quickly, and he plays a tremendous amount of Hearthstone to go along with that, to supplement his abilities. So that's kind of like just the good at Hearthstone bit. But for Dane on the other side, there have been several points where I've disagreed with his actual play from where I've been watching in History of Hearthstone, but he's not letting nostalgia get to him in this instance. He knows Wild inside and out, so he knows the traps that people fall into, like Patron Warrior that we saw, maybe like Murloc Paladin as well, that Jackie was going for, and he doesn't let himself get caught up on those. He just brings incredibly solid decks, which is of the utmost importance when you have this many cards to play with.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, Dane even said to us last week in his winning interview, he said, I actually can't wait for next week because I've got some cool stuff ready. Like, he's already ahead, he's already thinking about it, and he knows what's powerful, especially when, as we'll mention again, this week's format is much more like Wild format is in its current iteration. And also, just a shout out, this is back-to-back weeks here for Neriah, showing off the guns, wearing the vest.
I know. I didn't realize I'd be getting paid with a free ticket to the gun show.
Well, Neriah provides, entertainment on every single level. But kicking off the game now, and every time I see Dane play, I like it. He's bringing Feign Death / Death Rattle / Awesome Hunter, as Feign Death was in his opening hand. He did throw it away, but this is again a deck for a Hunter deck that can do Hunter things, be aggressive, kill them. Also, you get silly things like Feign Death with Dots and Sneed's Old Shredder.
Wow. This is a pretty cool example of, what's great about Hearthstone. We see the spicy stuff in Dane's deck and the things that truly never change, like Wild Growth on turn 2 into Greetings. Like, that's just eternally the best play on turn 2.
I think the only one that beats it is Priest Hero Power Zanduin Emote.
Oh, Threaten. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. The light shall burn you. Yeah, I concede.
Yeah. It's also a good emote. Here's the old Fandral, something we don't see anymore, but we used to see him in almost every single Druid game. Fandral's power level was actually kind of weird, right? Fandral, to me, one of the most powerful legendaries, but no one complained about it. It was just powerful. It was just strong. Difference between strong and too strong, I guess. I'm just staring at this Sneed's Old Shredder and a better Hearthstone historian than me in the chat's not going to correct me in a bit, but was it Tides of Time and Strife Crow that did the Sneed Shredder into Sneed Shredder into Sneed Shredder? Or was it Tides? Tides and Tides, they sound the same, so maybe that's okay. It was someone. And I don't know if you remember seeing it, Derek, but it was like Sneeds into Sneeds. It was insane. Into Sneeds.
Was that? Oh, no, yeah, that was Kit Kats, wasn't it?
Was it Kit? Oh, my God. Tides.
Yeah.
Kit Kats, same person, right?
Yeah, all the true memes of the past, as it were, as Hearthstone memes were so dominated by those people. But yeah, it was, when it worked, it was just so absolutely glorious.
It was quite ridiculous on every level, but already, Neriah might have the damage, the mana, but Dane has the damage and has the pressure right now. Neriah doesn't really have much follow-up. He can remove, but now there's High Main, and then there's Feign Death and Armor Companion, and there's Shredder.
is this druid deck, you know, it has
biggest.
a tremendous...
We've even brought back old bugs. Nothing but top production here on History of Hearthstone. Really reliving the past. We relived the cards, relived the memes, and relived the bugs. Oof, I love it.
We do indeed. Are the minions going to start dancing around now randomly in terms of their position? Just to give us a true taste of what it was like. Oh my god.
Speaking of memes, as if someone pulled the lever, as if on demand. The totem golem out of the shredder.
That is absolutely disgusting. What, like, Shredder today has been insane. We've seen Kindly Grandmother, Totem Golem. Like, the card was good, but it wasn't this good. Maybe it was.
It was good. There you go.
It was very good. I will grant you that.
Oh, the Boombot's going to get some work done. Oh, yeah, the double spell damage was big. Oh. Dane can't believe it. He plays wild for a living. Still not used to Boombots. Fame Death's not looking so pretty now, is it?
And, oh man, what are you meant to do in situations like that?
Concede. King's Alec, a card I was never a fan of.
Really?
Well, look, really it's good. Bad. It's lost.
No, it was so good.
It wasn't.
I mean, no 2-drop was going to save you there anyway.
Totem Golem again, maybe.
No. You're just dead.
The issue I had with King's Alec is because you were playing Hunter, you were always playing a relatively low curve deck. So you're always losing that.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. When it was good, though, it was so good.
Replay Boom, like... let's go.
I think you might do it.
Goes for the swag plays. Raven Idol into Discover Minion into Discover Boom.
That would be supreme swag.
Lunar Visions to reduce his Malagos. And now I've got the hiccups. Oh no. Just needs in.
I mean, in terms of taunts, I'm trying to think back of what, like, could try to stem this amount of damage. Like, Bolf or other kinds of big taunts, that they kind of stopped printing the powerful taunt legendaries.
Pass? Yeah, pretty
Nothing
hard pass on that.
Exactly.
Saga would have done it,
That's
I
true.
guess. Saga, yeah, maybe. But yeah, that was just a rough game. I mean, you just got absolutely dumpstered because guess what? Boombots and a double as your Drake are pretty good when you want to have got some spells as well. So Dane taking the loss there versus Neriah in game number 1. But I think a big theme of this is Azure Drake's a good card.
Yeah,
I think we've seen Azure Drake in most decks, and guess what? It's sick every single time.
It's true. A 4/4 body is just enough. Like, it pushes damage, it locks out the mid game, because what we've seen from a lot of these decks is it is tremendously powerful early games from the likes of Shaman, with Totem Golems and Tunnel Trugs, but the mid games have been a little bit more lacking. Obviously, the Druid doesn't have the strongest mid game plays, but Azure Drake really helps to fight back against that, because if you can even just go Azure Drake into Moonfire or into the Living Roots on turn 5 or 6, like, that's the kind of play you need that just tips you over the edge into not dying.
Yeah, and it shows just, again, it's just the things that have changed, right? You know, we're not like doing an exact duplicate of what happened in the past, but let's see what happens in game number 2 here for Dane versus Neriah. The last match we have of History of Hearthstone this week. I feel like it's flown by, but still plenty more games potentially left, as Neriah looks like he is also playing the Anything Can Happen, and Dane locking in Hunter again. And this is a matchup that I think Dane could just kill Neriah in way too fast.
I would agree with you there. For those of you who may have just joined us in the last series, Jackie got 0-3'd with this Murloc Anything Paladin. Like, it wasn't even close. I suppose against the Freeze Mage, there was kind of the hints of a chance that it might be able to push it over, as Orange did need a card off the top to win it. But even then, Jackie got an absurdly good Murloc hand. He had the exact Rag Lightlord when he needed it, in combination with the Equality, and still wasn't able to pull things out.
Yeah, I think there's a reasonable amount that we've not really talked about a lot, but people just got better at the game. Like, this was a long time ago now.
Right.
In terms of this meta, especially last week and the weeks before, people just got better at the game. Like Freeze Mage as a deck, when that was first a deck, barely anyone could play it. Barely anyone could ever really play it, to be completely honest. But people got better. So even the deck building, the deck ideas and the lineups, and the actual pulling off the plays is just going to be better in general from everyone here. And Neriah clear it up. Oh God, these shredders, man. Like, it might not like the best minion, but it's still 4 attack, and that still kills the war leader. Do you have to coin weapon this? Actually, coin weapon's fine, right? You can just slam Belcher next turn anyway. So he's just going to go for the weapon. As I said, he does have the Belcher available for next turn, or he still has the flexibility of Barnes into Humility as well. Whereas on Dane's side, Mad Scientist into Secret can help. Does have Lotheb just on curve if you wanted to, but instead going for the Animal Companion into either the Secret or the Mad Scientist.
And this for Dane, yeah, really hasn't been, going in the way you would want to, because I mean, I agreed with you at the start. It looked like he might just be running away with the victory, because he'd just be stomping over his opponent. But this is the power of Sludge Belcher in this deck. Oh man, the fact that these decks kind of like overlap, that you're seeing Sludge Belcher in any kind of a control deck, just puts such a stop to any kind of mid-game pressure that Dane can try and throw down. But on the other side, he's just got every best card from the previous expansion in like Lotheb, Sylvanas, and Dr. Doom. It's going to take a tremendous amount from Neriah to stand up against this.
Yeah, I think this matchup is looking relatively close. There is the negation that Neriah has in the form of these humilities. So suddenly the high main, which was going to just tear through Neriah's minions, just can't anymore. But as you said, boom, Lotheb. Lotheb's huge, because guess what? You really aren't casting a 10-mana spell when Lotheb's been played. So Lotheb is just a guaranteed you are not doing anything next turn, or you are not killing me next turn.
Yeah.
Play from Dane, and look at the power. Sylvanas even stealing the Murlocs are going to be pretty nice. If it comes to it, all just to deal with actually Tyrion. If Tyrion ever comes down, he can actually just Sylvanas kill command if he's got a beast. Oof, nice boombot.
Yeah, you take those every day. Boombots showing why they are as truly oppressive as we once believed them to be. But this is the interesting thing here for Dane, because while he does have super powerful cards in his hand, they're relatively slow cards. Like, he doesn't have anything to flip the board quickly into his favor. He has to rely on his opponent not being able to deal any damage. And, he's getting off relatively lightly in that fact, because Neriah doesn't have the full suite of Murlocs to bring back with, and anything can happen. But maybe for Neriah, if he can find those Murlocs in a very timely fashion indeed, that's the kind of situation where maybe if the Lotheb doesn't lock out the anything, it could deliver a surprise lethal.
Yeah, these 2 humilities are clutch for Neriah. That's absolutely insane. That's like, 11 power just gone. Is this a turn where actually Dane just says, you know what, fine, and just plays Mad Scientist hero power? Because, yeah, this is great actually. Mad Scientist hero power. If a power 8 drop comes out, then you can just Sylvanas and kill command it to steal either the Tyrion or Rag if you want.
Oh, no way. That's sick. I didn't even think.
Yeah, this is, all kill command now, I guess, just to push as much damage as possible. So Dane's not bothered. Dane wants to Lotheb next turn and kill him, basically. With the call, or you can call the wild next turn.
Yeah, I guess like if your opponent plays exactly Tyrion, you're not in that bad of a spot anyway, because like you say, you can just buff up your minions with power of with Call of the Wild, or just go with a Sylvanas, because even if they get a 1/1, you're still likely looking at like a 33% minimum to take out the Tyrion.
This is nice as well. Call the Wild lines up really well. And it's the hyenas. This was the big deal with just being able to just pass the turn into the Doomsday quite happily, is that you get the hyenas. And Dane is just doing the trademark Hunter thing of, I will just keep applying pressure until it becomes too much and overwhelms you. Because look, these hyenas just, okay, it's only 4 power, But 4 power, when he put him to like, what, 16 or something, you know, the previous turn, suddenly with Bo, with more hero powers, maybe another kill command, game's just over.
Yeah. And this is the situation you want to be in as the hunter because, you know, yes, the paladin does have a pretty respectable amount of healing in the form of definitely Rag Lightlord and maybe a copy of Lay on Hands that's knocking you about in there as well. They only have so many board clears, and you have too many threats in this clearly very high-value hunter to push things back.
This is just, yeah, it's just too much, right? Look, it is so sick. Just the low, yeah, look at Neriah's face sums this up, right? Lotheb's just, no. We're not doing anything that good this turn. And there, the victory is yours. Fist pump from Dane. As he does even it up. There's plenty more he's going to do, though, to actually win the series. But overall, that's a good win for him. Just getting that hunter out of the way in what a much better matchup, as you can see there. Like I said, Paladin just can't do much versus just good, solid minions, especially with a lot of death rattles. I do feel that high main into Boom, into Lotheb as well was actually a pretty big deal there.
And that's just been the kind of the weakness of any kind of control-ish version of Paladin for the longest time, because Equality in Consecration or Equality in Pyromancer, we know is an incredibly powerful turn when you do it, but it's the fact that you can only do that twice in any one game means that you're not removing minions quickly enough. And so when you have such explosive decks in this kind of wild format as we see with this hunter, with the likes of Aggro Shaman, clearing off boards every few turns is not good enough. You have to kill off every minion as soon as it comes down.
Yeah, and the biggest deal as well is people just play around it, right? You know, you don't need to have it. You can just, if your opponent has Wild Pyro Equality, which they play Murloc Paladin, of course they do, then you can actually just say, well, I'll just put just enough pressure on to be a problem. If they have Wild Pyro and Equality, they might need to do it to force it. But let's get into this game now. Neriah on what appears to be the Freeze Mage again. This deck's not going anywhere, especially now that Forgotten Torch is in the pool. Dane with something Priest. There was Entomb, now there's Recombobulator, Organized Soul Priest, Sludge Belch. Priest. Nazoth Priest, maybe? I don't know.
Priest. Yeah, I mean, this may be the kind of priest that, what was it? I think Kalento might have popularized it with the Shrinkmeister, Recombobulator, Cabal Shadow Priest as well, where you basically just try and steal everything your opponent can do and switch it with the Recombobulator. Obviously, it's slightly more effective against decks that actually play minions. Against a Freeze Mage, might not be quite so good.
Yeah, and I wonder what others. Yeah, as we can see there, Recombobulator. Neriah just tilted his head a little bit, like, "Huh, oh, okay." There's a Recombobulator there, but yeah, definitely not the best when you're against a deck that doesn't really have even a remotely close minion focused. Now, even nearly Starseeker, right? It's built to be an ultra control deck against a deck that just kills people. I will say that Forgotten Torch, can add a little bit more burn. There's Organized Soul Priest. There might be Flash Heals as well.
Ooh.
Maybe even just a card True Heart for actual more burn damage with the Soul Priest.
Maybe Light of the Naru, as we're in.
Saw some of that last week.
Era as well. Yeah, could be very strong indeed. But, this is the kind of, as we do see the Shrinkmeister there, this is the kind of deck I'm thinking of. It kind of preyed on the likes of playing powerful singular minions, a lot of Death Rattle minions, because if you're going for something like a Ken, a Sylvanas, or a Sludge Belcher, something like that, and they just go for Shrinkmeister, Cabal Shadow Priest, you are feeling very, very sad indeed.
Yeah, and when especially you play in a meta where Sludge Belcher was everything, that's just a great steal, isn't it? Everyone plays it, so if you can steal that in any way, it's going to be pretty good. Now Elise is just going to be, this is old Elise. You new kids on the block might not remember Elise as a 3/5, but yeah, this was the original Elise, not the new one we have nowadays.
This card was sick. I remember at first with the Control Warriors that were playing literally no threats whatsoever. You just played Elise and Justicar, and then all removal, like 28 removal cards, and at the end you just give yourself the Golden Monkey and as many big threats as you could possibly make. It was a very cool deck indeed.
Yeah, led to some really crazy games.
It did. Led to some very boring games as well.
Completely true, as most Control Warriors are, in my opinion.
Agreed.
I don't understand people who enjoy that deck. I don't mind Taunt Warrior, though. because the quest means the game ends.
Well, like, Control Warrior is fun. I like Control Warrior, but the mirror is just blooming, especially when it was just who drew Justicar first. Those are not memories I want to go back to.
Control Warrior sucks. Give me a Ragnar's Hero Power and we'll call it a deal. Now, it's definitely weird because Neriah probably just wants these torches out of hand. I just wonder how much he considers just going face with them.
Oh, do you reckon?
Well, are you ever considering the fact that you're going to get beaten up by Priest?
It's not so much the fact that you're going to get beaten up. Actually, no, that's a good point, I suppose, because even if they do have a bunch of healing, eventually you're going to be sending it through anyway.
Right. You want the 6 damage torches, not the 3 damage torches, right? So you may as well put some pressure on. And if they're using their hero power to heal, then they're doing even less damage to you. So it heals you as well, buys you more time. I'm not saying just randomly throw them to face, of course, but just something to consider that Neriah probably doesn't want to sit with torches. You want to actually reduce the hit the Thaurissan on the roaring torches, not the Forgotten.
I suppose the only thing to consider then for Neriah is, are there any must-remove minions, like, for example, an Emperor Thaurissan or a Lyra the Sunshard? And to be honest, at this point in the history of Hearthstone, I don't think there really was in Priest. Like, everything was kind of reactive. They didn't play threats of their own. But having said that, we are now seeing the tempo swings that are available through the likes of Kabul Shadow Priest, as well as the other steely effects, which means Dane is putting on a lot of pressure, and Neriah all of a sudden kind of has to play on the defensive.
Yeah, there's definitely no Lyra, not in this game at least. Because,
that is true.
That's long gone, or at least not even long gone. That's in the future. You see in the future, Derek. So that's going to be week after next, I think. Or next week? I
next
can't
week.
remember.
Yeah.
It's next week, right?
Yeah, next week it's going to be Mean Streets and Unglory.
Right. Yeah, we see now there's True Heart as well. And this is just a lot of damage at this point.
This is a lot of damage. Like, I was expecting the 100% for the Forgotten Torch to be used as just minion removal, but it's just being used through to the face here. We were talking about the mage using the Forgotten Torches for damage to face, not the blooming priest.
But this is a big deal as well. The steal on the scientist was huge because that scientist would have pulled a barrier. So suddenly Neriah is on 16, not 8. If the barrier was pulled. Well, it'd be on even more because the scientist wouldn't have attacked for Dane. So that steal with the Cabal Shadow Priest was actually kind of huge.
Yeah, massive.
Because at the time he had 2 ice blocks in hand, right?
Oh, really? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, so he would have pulled the barrier 100%, which is obviously what you want versus the minions. Now, can I 2 damage to face? Let's go.
So the Justicar True Heart being played here, not being played here, sorry, it means... so if your opponent plays Alexstrasza here... Oh, no, sorry, they're on turn 8, so you can play the Justicar on the following turn anyway. So, yeah, I think getting the damage in here is probably for the best, because the upgraded hero power this turn made no difference.
Yeah. And he wants the damage, right? There might be a case where
absolutely.
He plays it next turn, deals 4. And also, the longer the Soul Priest lives, he could wait till turn 10 and deal 6.
And he probably will just do 4 here. Like, that's just good. That means that the on the following turn, if he wants to stay...
Oh, no, I like this. This is so good. This sets up the damage. It's unlikely the Soul Priest dies. You don't want Barrier to be pulled, which you know it will 100% be pulled, because you want your minions to attack. So now Neriah has to freeze the board, be scared of Orkanai, and try and win the game. That's asking a lot of questions. That's a sick play from Dane.
Yeah. I think you've brought me around to it. I was kind of thinking, for the other minions you have to kill off, like Alexstrasza and Emperor Thaurissan, you really want to be dealing with those, but, whichever one comes down first, you can just shadow a death, and you should probably have won the game by the time the second one comes down anyway.
Well, the funny thing is, if Alexstrasza comes down, he can prot the block regardless.
Yes, yeah.
Which is sick. That is so good. Now the torches are going to be used, and very much better than just going to face randomly. Killing off the Soul Priest is a big, big deal.
This is, however, I suppose the downside of Dane's play is that he did not go for the upgraded hero power for 4 damage to face. So his opponent now was only at 4. So there's no ice block pop available on this turn. And while I suppose it wouldn't have been an ice block pop anyway because the ice barrier would have been pulled out. It's worth considering that maybe he could have just gone for no minions attacking through and just continuous hero powers if the Shadow Priest had stayed alive, or the Soul Priest, sorry.
If the Soul Priest stays alive, though, you do proc because you just took out this turn.
That's true. Okay.
That's the thing, right? I think there's almost no difference, depending on what's in Dane's deck, of course, between 4 and 1, or 4 and 2, should I say, when there's only ice block going to be live. So I think it was correct in the long run.
And the other thing I'm remembering now as I think back to my Justicar days is if Dane saves it here, that's an additional 2 healing when Alexstrasza comes down, because he can obviously go hero power, Justicar, hero power. And that extra 2 health could make all the difference in the world.
Which is why if the Alkanai lived when Neriah was on 6, it was fine, because Justicar deals 2 and then deals 4.
Okay.
Which you can do on 10 mana, obviously. So yeah, it's roughly the same thing. Still a tricky game, though. These oozes are a problem for Neriah. Neriah, like, awkwardly has to kill the Doomsayer? Like, in a weird way? I think what he has to do here, actually, is
Alexstrasza.
Yeah, I think he just has to go for it. Because this is, again, another nice, just solid play from Dane, I think, where the oozes just proc the block, right? So he just has to go for it and hope there's no heal.
So obviously we can see heal up to, what, 21 on this turn? And then the amount of damage that can come through is, 6, 9, 13 plus 6, 19 damage, I think, on this turn available.
I'm just doing all the different ways you can play. I'm working out.
That's it.
That's it, right? Because the second torch. It's 22, right? 22?
Yeah, I think so. Double Roaring Torches, 12, 15 with the Frostbolt, 19, 23 even, I think.
Oh, you're cracking up a little bit there, don't...
Oh, sorry.
Oh, check your mic signs. I think something's happened where your mic's changed. But anyway, that is going to be the game for the first one. That's actually kind of nuts. Neriah actually just got there with the torch. Dane set himself up as well as could possibly be done, to be completely honest. But the second torch was just getting him there. That was absolutely huge. And then Neriah goes up 2-1 now versus Dane. Is Dane the wild legend at this point? And a lot of big fan favorite, I think, actually going to take his first loss now.
It's certainly looking that way. I mean, although Neriah does have the Murloc Paladin, which again could just be the weak point for him, all of his other decks seem to be very strong indeed. The Freeze Mage just absolutely seems to be a winner so far. The Druid also a tremendously strong deck as well. So I think he's still in a decent spot, but he does just have to get that win with this Paladin now, which if anyone could do it, it's going to be Neriah. Very strong, creative player. He thinks about the game very well, so he should be able to adapt to this scenario pretty well, I think.
Yeah, and he's got 2 goes at it as well, and I don't know. It's weird seeing the Paladin struggle as much as it has been doing it. Honestly, maybe it's just a nice memory for me because I enjoyed the deck, but maybe it just wasn't as good as we thought it was. But like I said, maybe people just considered the deck more. And for example, Dane just openly said last week straight away was, yes, I knew Patron was going to absolutely suck, so I built a lineup that didn't include Patron and that could beat Patron because I thought people would bring it because they liked it. So, you know, maybe it's the same with the Paladin. He knew Paladin would fit into this meta, and he can bring things that actually beat it. Oh, sorry. Do you remember Museum Curator? I forgot about that card. That was a cool card.
You love a card so much you have to interrupt your train of thought. It was a very cool card. I agree. What would you go for? Like, what were the best ones? Shifting Shade was very nice. Obviously, Sludge Belcher and stuff like that, if you could line them up.
Sorry, I was just choking for a second there. But yeah, there are a lot of good Death Rattle cards. I'm still choking. You carry on for a second, Dark.
Okay, I'll carry on. But this matchup, I think, as we can already see, is going to be a super interesting one because as has been the way with a bunch of decks where you need minions to die, the way you play can be super unintuitive because obviously these Murlocs for Neriah, they have to die. If they are to be like polymorphed, hexed, something like that, the combo falls apart. And if they are stolen by his opponent with the likes of Shrinkmeister, Intocable, Shadow Priest, then things still just fall apart completely. So maybe in the later stages of the game, we start to see stuff like Murloc, Pyromance into equality, just to guarantee that they die for the couple of copies of Anything Can Happen, which really ties the deck together.
I agree, Derek, as I'm back from my coughing fit. Oof. Don't try and talk and drink something at the same time. It doesn't really often work out that well. It's a free health tip from Raven.
I wasn't going to try that anyway, but thanks for the
Well, now
advice,
you know, right? Now you know for sure. Yeah,
That's
now it's
true.
100%. So, this is a weird board, right? Because of the Deathlord Doomsayer interaction.
What is a loon's will?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about what like goes wrong for Neriah in this scenario. With
Right.
the Deathlord pulling out like Murlocs is fine, as long as they die. Like again, as I said, they just have to die at some point. Is the
I guess
crucial
like
thing.
Raglight Lord, Tyrion. Is the problem. Do you actually just coin out the second Deathlord and just go deep? Just be like, right, let's go. Give me a minions.
Or you got to be pretty scared then, because like what, they get 2 minions at that point onto the board, and if you, as you said, if they get Tyrion and Light Lord, you just kind of lose.
Let's see what they get. Wall Eater, that's really nice. Yeah, it was almost
That'll
just
do.
a win-win there for Neriah, right? It's just nothing was really that bad.
Yeah, and Solemn Vigil, very, very nice as well, with the huge mana reduction here for Neriah. And his draw is just looking fantastic. He's showing absolutely no signs of slowing. And with, what, 3 Murlocs available to be played already, a copy of Anything Can Happen is probably just going to close out the game sooner rather than later.
Yeah, there's Shadow Madness, gonna draw Neriah a card, but is he getting rid of this Murloc? Gonna recome Bubba. What did he get?
Ooh.
I can't even remember what that does. Good job. Oh, yeah, really good for Priest.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not doing anything. I have to be honest, my screen did just go very pixely indeed. I thought that was Sonya's Shadow Dancer for a second, but
Oh yeah, same here. It's fine. Yeah.
Ograr Aspire.
Join the club.
Yeah, a little bit less impressive to say the least.
Okay, well, still doesn't mean it's something over nothing, right? So it's still a minion that's going to help, and now the Soul Priest fun happening all over again. Are you bothered about Soul Priest? Is this just a trade with the True Silver, I guess? No,
I don't
it's
think
going
you're
for the
really
draw.
that upset. Yeah, you just need to keep the draw going. Like, unlike with the Mage match, where obviously Dane was putting forward a huge amount of damage, and the Soul Priest being killed off was pretty damn important. In this instance, for Neriah, you just don't care. You're under basically no pressure at all. Again, the only thing you need to be afraid of is another one of your Murlocs being stolen from your opponent, because now that he's got 1 War Leader dead, a couple of Bluegills potentially being thrown in the pool at a later point. As long as this Murkai dies this game, Neriah should be in a decent spot to take this.
Yeah, you just have to set up a position to make sure it dies. And that's the scary part, right? Because how? How does he actually kill it? He has to equality it. Like equality pyro it, right? Because if he doesn't, Light Bomb clears the Murlocs for Dane. So if he can clear the Murlocs and not die to the next swing, then he just wins, because this Paladin deck doesn't really have much else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I suppose you would have to then stick a Rag Light Lord or something like that to be able to wrestle
which-
this back. But yeah, as you said, that's not
It's
really
ain't
going
gonna
to happen.
Yeah.
So you are relying all in on getting that 1-turn kill. And I think even with only having 1 War Leader, if you get 2 War Leaders back and 4 Bluegills and 2 Murkais, that's still a tremendous amount of damage you're pushing forward.
Oh, 100%. The second one, even with the -1 War Leader initially, the second one will just kill Dane. Like,
Right.
it does a stupid amount of damage. But he just has to get the time to actually kill the Murkai first. So these pyros are very important, but he just needs to draw an equality. And now he has to get cards out of his hand, which is a little bit annoying too. Because none of his cards really look nice. Oh, wait. He could? Whoa. Okay. He could have Murkai, went into the Sludge Belcher, and then Pyro. Conk to actually kill the Murkai.
Yeah. I mean, I guess he's thinking with this hand, it's going to die at some point anyway, because he should be able to just like straight up kill it off to an opposing minion, or if he draws an equality at any point. But actually, having said that, doing it sooner rather than later would make a big deal, because then you can just start going off with these.
He already has 2 anythings, right?
Yeah.
Do you have the artifact?
Yeah, that's the big kicker for me, at least.
Because like Murkai is the most vulnerable of all, because it's obviously the one you want most, and it just gets stolen by Cabal Shadow Priest.
At this point, I would really like to see Neriah kill this Murkai. Still not going for it. But this is digging him closer to an equality. He clears off the Elise.
Yeah, keeping the board as clear as possible, but
Soul Priest still alive though.
yeah, it just doesn't even matter. Like, it's just about killing off that Murkai, which now the more I look at it, the more I like your play, because removal you don't need to worry about. This priest is very low on threats. You're not going to see a sudden ramping up of the pressure big time. Neriah now is just worried about these taunts not actually being able to connect through to face.
Yeah, and the biggest issue for me is it will take a turn to kill Murkai, which means then it's another turn till you can play the first anything. The first anything's probably not going to do that much. So it's a lot of setup, a lot of calculation on exactly what the anythings are going to do for you. And if you can get through it in Sludge Belcher, horrible minion to deal with. I did actually wonder whether Dane should have waited with the Sludge Belcher till he saw another Murloc. Because Sludge Belcher is a great card to play into the anything. Because that is 2 hard-hitting Murlocs that have to hit that Sludge Belcher.
That's a good point. And I suppose if he had N'Zoth in his hand, I could much more understand this play, because then when you see the first anything, you try and clear it off, or before you even see the first one, you just go with N'Zoth because it's a board they're never going to get through. But when you don't even have that in hand, you want to have some kind of preventative measure against a big board of Murlocs.
Yeah, so Sludge Belchers was sick. It's you used to, or at least I used to often just wait and play 2 Sludge Belchers into their turn 10, and they just can't really anything. All they do, and it just does nothing. But here comes Murkai now, but can he kill? Oh, there you go. Yep, that's one way to do it.
Yeah, just wondering if it was worth going for, Pyro Consecration, or even something like Pyro into Humility on the same turn, but instead going for the full board clear to set up for all Murlocs to face on the following turn, as N'Zoth is picked up off the top by Dane.
This is spicy.
Very spicy indeed. How he meters this out, though, is very important.
It is, but he's just seen equality to clear nothing, which is why I like the Pyro Conk clear, because at least equality can clear off stuff a little bit easier.
That's true.
But also the N'Zoth just refills Belchers. Oh, God.
And he's going to get him 2 more Death Lords as well.
Yeah, it's just a lot of taunts and sick. 1/1 Doomsayer.
It's a strict buff. Look at that green attack.
That is pretty. It's pretty weird, that isn't it? Because the health isn't red.
Very weird.
You know what I mean? If the attack's going to change color because it's buffed, the health should change color because it's nerfed. Jeez, Blizzard.
No way to differentiate it from being damaged then. It should be purple.
I like purple, so I can back this plan.
All right, we'll get behind that.
Okay. Vol'jin. Oh, maybe it is a buff because the Doomsayer now can't be stolen. It's 7 health to Vol'jin. It's all starting to come together. Okay, Blizzard, I'm sorry. I take it all back. You were right all along. I will never
I
question
had a
you
plan
again.
for this exact moment.
That was the first and last time I'll ever question you.
I find that highly unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
As Dane, I mean, his main play here is not to think about how he kills his opponent. It's about how he just bunkers down and survives all the threats that his opponent could put forward. Threats on the board help him to do that because he can obviously trade into Murlocs from his opponent. But really from him, it's most importantly about timing this N'Zoth absolutely perfectly.
So there's something I really like Paladin, the Murloc Paladin, but there's some intricacies as well that we've not even talked about. Whereas Dane could have just gone all face and just said, "Well, your minions don't die to the Death Lord, so your board has minions on it, so that's less Murlocs you can summon from anything."
That's true.
Just the tiny things, and they're not relevant to this turn because they didn't because Neriah didn't summon enough Murlocs anyway for it to be a problem. But it is something to consider that suddenly this Aldor Peacekeeper isn't a Murloc, and next turn if Neriah wants to summon, he might be one down.
So Neriah here going for the not full suite of Murlocs here with the first Bluegill not even being summoned, but manages to get out of the end. He only has one card left in his deck at this point, which is what, Rag Light Lord or something?
But how Neriah just loses, right? N'Zoth next turn for Dane, and then the Murlocs get played. He punches everything, but because of the nature of Belchers, he has to punch too many things, and then Dane just light bombs. GG.
Oh, can it really be that simple? Like,
I think so.
So what,
N'Zoth now?
Yeah.
There's like a billion Belchers and Deathlords.
We only got
Neriah
one...
has to spend a turn punching through all this.
Oh, man.
That's what? That's minimum 6 attacks. There's only 7 minions on the board, and one of them's a 3/1.
You're right. He's got no threats other than this copy of...
And equality... The weapon and the Peacekeeper are actually good, because the equality makes this a big deal.
Oh no, but look, he's got the clear. So on the next turn, he can just go for lethal. Like, he's able to go for...
Oh, you want to pyro into... Oh, wait.
Yeah, pyro humility this turn. He's got a full clear.
Right, oh. God, I know nothing.
But it's
that was actually a really good play. Yeah.
Beautifully done there, saving the exact cards he needed to clear off the board. Like, you know, we were saying skeptically, maybe he should have gone for an earlier clear to get rid of the old Murkai, which may, I think, have worked out equally as well in this scenario. But the fact that he kept the exact 2 cards he needed is working incredibly well for him here.
The Deathlord upon the Murloc was also almost, pretty much guaranteed with the deck being empty and only running X amount of minions anyway. Yeah, I'm trying to wind back now, and I guess the importance of that weapon in Aldor Peacekeeper are actually huge. Imagine if that board was clear. You can't cloth the sludges. That is actually a big deal, Dan.
Very big deal.
Dane knows it.
Dane knows it.
I told you, the second anything, you just get him. I told you. He even lost one of his Murlocs early on, and it just doesn't matter. The second anything with the old Murkais kills you. That is just the case. But that exact clear required into the Belchers, into the N'Zoth turn, was massive and literally won Neriah that game and won Neriah that series. That was a pretty cool one. And Dane takes the loss.
Absolutely, and this is what I was highlighting. You know, the fact that you have such strong players taking these decks. The pre-building aspect, I think, may have helped Dane more in previous weeks. I think his decks he brought this time, they didn't look quite as strong as what he went for in previous times, because in terms of pitfalls that you could fall for this time, it didn't really feel like there were many other than potentially this Paladin, which Neriah was so good with. It ended up just being a fine deck for him.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing now is preying on, they're going to bring this deck or this couple of decks, right? That gets much harder when there's now way more expansions to choose from. We added 3 in this time. There was 2 more last time and 2 before. So it's actually, the number's getting pretty high right now. You can check how today has gone overall. And 3-0 over Sixto pretty quick early on as his control decks were quite aggressive in the end. Saiyan 3-2 over Zalae off the back of the cheeky ultimate infestation from a Raven Idol. Jackie taking a hit from Orange as Orange actually finished up that series with some pretty brave freeze mage play. And then Dane, we've just seen taking his first loss of the tournament to Neriah, who is currently 4-0 now, unbeaten in a tournament that's effectively meta changes every single week. Pretty tough one.
Yeah, and it shows just great overall matchup understanding from some of these players. Like we've seen really good play today, I would say, from Neriah. I think Zalae, although he ended up losing, I liked a lot of what I saw from him as well as Orange with that very nice sequencing with his freeze mage taking him through to a victory as well. So it's a very good week, I think, altogether.
It is. Let's hear from Neriah though before we call it a day, as he is the winner of the final series. Neriah, congratulations. How are you feeling going against Dane? Because he's much more of a unknown player in terms of the competitive scene, but a player who plays a lot of wild formats. Were you feeling confident, or were you a little bit worried?
I felt confident because this week I could have brought my favorite decks that I used to love to play. It's like all of them were kind of OTK, like 30 damage. All 4 decks are available to do. So I was confident in my memory skills to remember how to play them.
And that's what we liked. Yeah, that's what we liked a lot from your play. Like at the end there, the really nice sequencing with Pyro and Equality. But I have to ask you, given that Jackie lost all 3 of his games with Murloc Paladin, was that more of a passion pick for you? Like you just loved the deck, or do you think it was actually a strong deck to bring in this format?
I love the deck, and I think maybe Jackie had a bit different list, because this was like heavy cycle list, and
yes,
I know that Dane likes to play kind of like mid-rangey control-ish decks, and since there is no combo druid that was a hard counter to Murloc Paladin, not hard counter, but it was really tough to beat combo druid in the past. I decided that it's gonna be a good choice, and also I messed up the last play with Pyro because I should have killed my Pyro and don't summon Dude, because Dane could have entombed my Doomsayer and I wouldn't be able to anything can happen because Pyro would kill all my 2-1 Murlocs.
Oh yeah, because there's no wall leader buff anymore, right? So they would have actually
yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool. How have you been enjoying this format changing every single week? Because I think it's kind of probably quite hard to keep up with, but I think it's something that a lot of players have enjoyed. Have you enjoyed it?
I'm enjoying to play different styles of decks and trying to remember what was the game plan. Like, for example, not keeping Ice Block against the Priest so they can't steal it and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's definitely been a lot of fun watching them. But again, congratulations, Neriah, the only player who's now unbeaten. So good luck for the rest of the tournament, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Okay, so that is all the matches we have today from History of Hearthstone. There's all the expansions. Next week, week number 5, it's going to be Journey to Ungoro, and Mean Streets of Gadgetzan is going to be thrown into the pot. But today we had a nice spread of different pacing and a fair few different decks, and also we have the joy of Derek. This one, did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy the matches?
Absolutely. I couldn't have asked for anything more. Some of my favorite decks from this era, like Neriah was saying, Murloc Paladin, as well as the Malagos Druid, which is a personal favorite of mine. Maybe not all doing all so well, but getting to see a very nice display of them as well. I've had a great time indeed.
Yeah, taking a walk down memory lane. Let's take a look at where all the players stand right now. Neriah, as I said, 4-0 with a 12-6 record. Dane lost to Neriah, so he's going to be second place with 3-1. Zalae, Saiyan, and Orange all even with 2-2, and then Jackie and Sixto going at 1-3 with progressively worse scores there. Sixto doesn't appear to be his tournament, but I'm sure he's got his eyes set on HCT this weekend. You know, it's been a pleasure. We've had another cool week of History of Hearthstone. We hope you enjoy the tournament and all the different formats we've been playing out. Make sure you give the channel a follow because there is still more weeks to play out. Hope you had a lot of fun. Any final parting words from you, Derek?
Just to say thank you so much to everyone who's watched. This is such a cool tournament that Tempo Storm is putting on, and obviously huge thanks to all the guys at Tempo Storm for bringing me on. It's been a lot of fun.
Okay, and thank you for joining me, Derek. Didn't want to cast alone, so it's a pleasure. Our first cast together was actually a weird one because it was just a meta that doesn't exist right now. So that was definitely a lot of fun. But yeah, thanks again, everyone, for watching, and make sure to tune in same time next week for some more History of Hearthstone. Goodbye.